regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Amy Marcos will lead the chamber in prayer. You are recognized, ma'am, and you may proceed.
Makapangyarihan Diyos, lumalapit kami sa inyo, dala ang bigat ng aming mga suliranin bilang isang bansa. Ang aming bayan ay nahaharap sa mataas na presyo ng bilihin, malawakang gutom, at mga paparating pang bagyo. Bigyan mo po kami ng mga pinunong matatag, hindi padadala sa alon ng ambisyon. Naway pagkalooban mo ng malinaw na pag-iisip ang iyong Senado upang matagpuan namin ang tamang solusyon sa mga pagsubok ng araw-araw. Ngayon nalalapit na rin ang halalan. Haplusin mo po ang puso ng bawat isa upang manaig ang interes ng bayan kaysa personal na interes ng mga kandidato at partido. Panginoon, isuklob mo po kami sa anumang banta ng digmaan sa aming karagatan. Bigyan mo po kami ng lakas ng loob at pagkakaisa bilang isang bansa upang harapin ang anumang pagsubok ng may dangal at may tapang. Bigyan mo po kami ng pag-asa at lakas upang ipaglaban ang katotohanan at gabayan mo ang inyong mga pinunong nararapat na maglingkod sa bayan upang ang aming kinabukasan ay maging mas maliwanag, mas makatarungan. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Marcos. Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President.
With 21 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 21st Session Wednesday, September 11, 2024, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
President, before we proceed with the orders for the day, there are some guests of the Senate that we will acknowledge. Officials from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, headed by Dr. Manuel Muhi, the University President, as well as Professor Alberto Guillo, the Executive Vice President. Visitors from Tarlac City, headed by Punong Barangay Joseph Turla and the barangay officials of San Pascual. Tarlac City, headed by Punong Barangay Benji Inglesia. Guests of Senator J.V. Ejercito, the Philippine Legislators Committee on Population Development, headed by Ms. Aurora Kilala, Jesusa Lugto, and Isabel Agregado, as well as Danica Magtubo of the Women's Global Network. Guests of Senate President Escudero, officials of the Sorsogon First Electric Cooperative, headed by the General Manager Edwin Garcia and Isableo Barabicho, Director of Matnog District, as well as the officials of Bulan District and Irusin District, Santa Magdalena, headed by Ana De Lovino, Paz Dominguez of Bulusan, and Angel Ayala, Director of Casiguran District. Guests of this representation, Mayor Jestler Kimbo of Labason, Zamboanga del Norte, Mayor Ronald Lara of Banganga, Davao Oriental, board members of Davao Oriental, headed by Michelle Malanyaon and Honorable Nenette Palmera, and Mayor Tito Mayo of Cuartero, Province of Capiz. Guests of Senator Nancy Binay, the incoming guest of Senator Nancy Binay, senior citizens from Valenzuela, Makati City, as well as senior citizens from Olympia, Makati City. Guests of Senator Rapi Tulfo, students from Ateneo Law School. Guests of Senator Grace Poe from Mindanao State University, Maguindanao Campus, Chancellor by Hejira Limbona, Vice Chancellor Raquel Santiago Arenas, Vice Chancellor Arceli Naraga, Professor Grant Lu, Professor Datu Makalandog, Rogelio Javier, and Jeremy Canlas. Guests of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Mayor Jane Yap, and former Mayor Baba Yap of Tagbilaran, Bohol. Guests of Senator Lauren Ligarda, officials of Sulu State College, led by President Karisma Ututalam. Guests of Senator Bongo, barangay officials of Labason, Zamboanga del Norte, together with barangay captains together with ABC President Annalisa Josue of Zamboanga del Norte. We welcome them, Mr. President.
To the aforementioned guests, welcome to your Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? Hearing none, Secretary is directed to comply.
Bill on first reading, Senate number 2826, an act enhancing the fiscal regime for the large-scale metallic mining industry, amending for the purpose sections 34B, 130D, 287, and the subjects of Title 6 and Chapter 7 thereof, and creating the new sections 151A, 151B, 151C, 151D, and 287-A, all under RA number 8424, and for other purposes. Senator Ejercito.
The Committee on Ways and Means.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution 1196, congratulating and commending the Philippine delegation to the 2024 Summer Paralympics in Paris, France. Senator Lapid.
The Committee on Rules.
1197, congratulating and commending Danielle Quezon for securing the title of Grandmaster at 20 years old at the 45th International Chess Federation Chess Olympiad, held at Box Sports Hall in Budapest, Hungary on September 15, 2024. Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
1198, congratulating and commending Rubilen Bingkay Amit as the first Filipina to win gold in the 2024 Mass World Pool Billiard Association Women's World 9-Ball Championship held in Hamilton, New Zealand. Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
1199, resolution establishing the Liwanag at Tubig Assistance Welfare Litaw Program to low-income households in times of calamities and other natural disasters. Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, and Finance.
Additional reference of business messages from the House. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 21 August 2024, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 10726, changing the name of Eastern Bontoc National Agricultural and Vocational High School in Lingoy, Barlig Mountain Province to Barlig National Agricultural and Vocational High School.
To the Committee on Basic Education.
10729, separating the Pasay City North High School, Tramo Campus in Barangay 57, Tramo, Pasay City, from the Pasay City North High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as the Pasay City National High School, appropriating funds
To
therefore.
the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
10270, institutionalizing the career progression system for public school teachers and appropriating funds therefore. Civil
To the
Service.
Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Basic Education, and Finance.
10522, declaring October of every year as a National Esports Month.
To the Committees on Youth and Sports.
10524, modifying the grounds for substitution of candidates, amending for the purpose Section 77 of BP 881, otherwise known as the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
House number 10691, prohibiting and penalizing the unauthorized practice of law and other related acts.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
10699, providing for cheaper and more accessible internet for all.
To the Committees on Public Services and Science and Technology.
House number 10723, exempting incentives, rewards, bonuses, and other forms of emoluments received by national athletes and coaches from taxes, amending for the purpose RA 10699, the National Athletes and Coaches Benefits and Incentives Act.
To the Committees on Sports and Ways and Means.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 21 August 2024, it designated Representatives Balmayor Jr., Alvarez, Salceda, Mercado Revilla, and Daza as conferees of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Number 9662 and Senate Number 2450, establishing a framework for blue economy.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 27 August 2024, it designated Representatives Arenas, Tupas, Rodriguez, Gonzalez II, Tanwaco III, Acheron, and Libanan as conferees of the Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Number 9034 and Senate Number 2665, authorizing the President of the Philippines to establish archipelagic sea lanes in Philippine archipelagic waters.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House dated 15 August 2024, transmitting to the Senate a copy of Resolution Number 229, resolution informing the Senate that the quorum being present, the House of Representatives has entered upon the exercise of its functions, which was adopted by the House on 22 July 2024.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 21 August 2024, it adopted Senate Number 2780 as an amendment to House Number 10722, an act granting juridical personality and legal capacity to the Board of the Fund for responding to loss and damage due to climate change.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 21 August 2024, it concurred with the Senate amendments to the following House bills. House Number 8484, upgrading the Bangi District Hospital in the Municipality of Bangi, Province of Ilocos Norte, into a Level 2 District Hospital, appropriating funds therefore. And House Number 8491, converting the Dr. Catalino Gallego Nava Provincial Hospital in Jordan, Province of Guimaras, into a Level 2 hospital and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 27 August 2024, it ratified the Conference Committee reports on the disagreeing votes of House Number 6580 and House Number 8254, creating additional branches of the RTC in the 4th Judicial Region to be stationed in the Municipalities of Rosario, San Juan, Batangas, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Archives. Majority Leader.
President, I move for a 1-minute suspension to restore silence in the chamber.
Prior to suspending session for 1 minute, Chair would like to once again remind our guests in the gallery to kindly settle down. Session is suspended.
That we resume consideration of Senate Bill Number 2804 under Committee Report Number 308. This is the bill on the new Development Bank of the Philippines Charter. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
Mr. President, I move to resume the period of interpellation and recognize the sponsor, Senator Mark Villar, and to interpellate the Honorable Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
Senator Villar is recognized. Well, Senator Pimentel, the gentlemen have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Majority Leader. With the permission of our sponsor,
Yes,
we can-
please proceed.
if we can conduct just an interpellation which will help us understand the bill, Mr. President, a very technical one. It's about a bank, Mr. President. We do not usually read the charters of banks, Mr. President. So this is the measure on providing for a new charter of the DBP. So may we know from the sponsor what are the new features that we are giving the DBP, Mr. President?
Well, first, increased capitalization. As of now, the authorized capital is 35 billion, and we want to increase it. We propose to increase it to 300 billion. This is in order to expand the level of service they can give in terms of financing and other, and of course their mandate for assisting in government in national development, and also allowing them to be used to have a initial public offering. So that's part of the bill. So they'll be able to raise funds through an IPO, and this would help expand the reach. Also, having the DOF secretary as a ex officio chairperson, and of course this would boost confidence in DDP if the chairperson is also a finance secretary, and of course, and also engaging in financial leasing. This will give them additional flexibility to assist local governments, perhaps in the acquisition of properties that might assist them in their mandate of serving the public.
What's that last one, Mr. President?
Engagement in financial leasing,
in financial leasing?
basically allowing, let's say, a local government, if I can be allowed to expand on that, basically allowing, let's say, a local government who wants to finance a building for one of their, they can enter into a lease to own agreement with DBP. So by doing so, they're able to free up more funds for their for servicing their other sectors by financing the purchase of infrastructures.
Under a lease to own. So we need to amend the DBP charter for
Yes, to allow them to. Yes.
Why cannot the DBP engage in lease financing, Mr. President?
It's as of now, it's not specifically included in their charter. It's not. It's prohibited. Is it prohibited?
It's prohibited right now.
Yeah. It's not in their charter now. It is not allowed.
So it's a good move to explicitly give this power to the DBP. Mr. President, hindi ba just recently we read about the plan to merge DBP and the Land Bank of the Philippines? So what is now the official position of the administration, if the sponsor knows, Mr. President?
Yes. I believe the merger was shelved in this year, the first quarter of this year. So currently there's no plans. There's no indication. There's no plans to pursue the DBP-LBP merger.
Ang DBP po is Development Bank of the Philippines. Pero is it acting like a regular bank, a normal universal bank, o meron ba siyang special purpose or aim, Mr. President?
It's a universal bank, but of course, part of its mandate is also from national development. So, as we mentioned earlier, when it was initially conceived, it was really conceived to engage in projects that would to finance projects and support projects that would aid in national development in various sectors.
Di ba currently, yan na yung mandate niya, Mr. President? Currently, that's already the mandate of the Development Bank of the Philippines. So how are the second change that the sponsor mentioned is that we are touching the mandate in national development of the mandate of the bank in assisting the national government. So in what way, Mr. President?
Well, initially, the primary purpose of the bank is to provide banking services principally to in Section 4, which is a policy, the DB mandate is expanded as may be consistent with the Philippine Development Plan and includes infrastructures, MSMEs, and high-impact programs in education, healthcare, housing, and protection of the environment. So, yes, it will expand its mandate to these sectors. And basically, with an overarching goal of national development.
Pwede, ano po ang bago, Mr. President? Parang ngayon, partner na siya in national development. Sa ngayon, I believe so, Mr. President.
Ano ba yung specific latter?
Ano ang bago
Yeah,
sa Section 4 sa enumeration?
In the former mandate, it reads as the primary purposes of the bank shall be to provide banking services, principally to service the medium and long-term needs of agricultural industrial enterprise, particularly in the countryside, and preferably for small and medium-scale enterprise. That's the initial. So by changing the objectives, we create a wider, a wider scope for the bank to help in national development.
Pero doon po ba sa existing mandate ng DBP, it has already made an impact, Mr. President?
Yes, it has made an impact, but there's that's expressly why we need to update and create these amendments for the land bank. If you compare, I believe the land bank right now is authorized capital of 800 billion. 800 billion pesos, whereas the DBP has only authorized of 35. So in order for it to engage in a larger scale of financing activities, it's paramount that they increase the authorized capitalization, and they also can also access the capital markets by engaging in an IPO. So this would allow them to have more funds that they can lend out to local governments or to other agencies that have national development goals.
Ano ito? Ito yung bill?
Ito yung loan nila. Ito yung charter nila ngayon, guys.
Binagot nila. So the sponsor mentioned the land bank pala is almost is more than 20 times larger than the DBP.
The authorized capital of
in-
land
in
bank is
authorized capital.
much larger than DBP.
So right now the authorized capital stock of DBP is 35 billion, and who has subscribed to this authorized capital stock of DBP?
Only the national government is subscribed.
Fully paid
Yes.
paid na po.
Is it paid up? Fully paid up?
32 of 35 ang paid.
Hindi, for land bank. The paid up of land bank, we have to get back to you on that.
Authorized capital stock.
For DBP, it's 32 of the 35 for DBP. But for land bank, we can get the information later.
Parang paid ng dati.
32. Okay. So the 35 authorized capital, I think this is one of the, I don't know, siguro, one of the major ideas or points to be pursued by the bill, the increase in the authorized capital stock, which should be made by law. Pero parang I encountered a section here where we are delegating that power to, when this law is enacted, if the bank wants to increase its capitalization, it need no longer go to Congress, because this will be delegated to the President or Secretary of Finance, Mr. President. I think there's a section there. Ano section yan?
Yes, there is a section on that, and that's also to expedite the process for if there's a need to increase. It doesn't have to go through legislation. The legislative process is quite a long process, tedious process. For these kinds of changes, I think we should give the bank some flexibility so that they can be able to serve their mandate better, especially in terms of their ability to finance projects in the public and private sector.
Will this be the first time that we will be granting government bank this power, Mr. President? How about the land bank? May power ba sila to increase their capitalization without going to Congress?
Yes, the land bank has that power, Mr. President. So may power sila.
Kaya ba umabot na sa 800 billion, Mr. President, ang capitalization, ang authorized capitalization?
Authorized capital, their paid up is about 163 and 787,711,000.
That's land bank.
That is the paid up capital of land bank, yes.
But the authorized, sabi nga, na-mention yata ng sponsor, the authorized capital stock is 800 billion?
Yes, that is correct. Authorized capital. So
Yes.
you only have to pay in a certain portion to have a certain authorized capital.
What is, so what,
20%.
just to help us, or to help me, Mr. President. So what's the purpose in providing for a very high number as authorized capital stock, and yet actually subscribing to just ano yun, one-fifth ata, one-fourth or one-fifth, Mr. President? What's the point of having this unsubscribed authorized capital stock?
One, of course, you're expecting growth in the bank in the medium to long term. So you have to provide for that. Siyempre, mahirap naman kung saktong-sakto. You have to, you have to provide for growth. At the same time, if you want to make certain financial actions, it helps to have the authorized capital. That would give you the flexibility to raise funds.
It's an asset.
Yes, I mean, it's basically, in the future, at least they have the flexibility to to increase their capital. They have the ability, because if it's closed now, they won't be able to infuse if it's too low. So it's part of it is looking forward. Part of it is also to allow them to allow them flexibility in terms of fundraising and other financial plays they might want to do in the future. So they can.
So in short, it's an asset, Mr. President?
Not yet, until it's just a limit. It's like a provision. It's a provision, not necessarily an asset yet. Because what your asset is, you're paid up. What you're authorized is what you can, up to what level you can declare as your capital in the future. So it doesn't mean that you have authorized of 800 na meron na kayong nagbigay na kayo ng 800 billion pesos worth of assets. It just means looking forward, that's the ceiling for the capitalization of your company.
You can open it up to that extent that you can now ask for subscriptions and payments. Ganun.
Yes, in terms of growth of assets.
May we know from the sponsor what provision of law grants the Land Bank, hindi DBP, the Land Bank of the Philippines, the similar authority to increase its authorized capital stock, because we cannot seem to find it, Mr. President.
RA 7907, the Act amending Republic Act number 3844 as amended, otherwise known as the Code of Agrarian Reforms in the Philippines. So I can read it also. The board, upon the recommendation of the Secretary of Finance and with the approval of the President of the Philippines, may increase the capital, this is referring to Land Bank, may increase the capitalization of the bank up to such an amount as may be necessary to attain the objectives of this act.
Sige. Section, ano po? Section...
Section 4, Section 4.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. So, at least we have established that this idea, this delegation of the authority to increase the capitalization of a government bank has already been granted,
yes,
and applied in the case of the Land Bank of the Philippines, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, there's also a section here where kasi di ba we will now increase the authorized capital stock, and then we will allow the bank, ayun, tama, we will allow the bank to anong tawag doon? Yung initial public offer,
IPO, yes.
offer
Initial public offering, yes.
Offer their shares in an initial public offering, thereby listing in the stock exchange. Will this be the first government bank listed in a stock exchange, Mr. President?
Yes, in the Philippines, that is correct.
So, we will list in the stock exchange, and then since the owner of all the outstanding shares is the national government, it will now be the national government offering its shares in the stock exchange? Is that what's going to happen?
It will be the bank offering its shares to the general public with a limit of 30%. So control of the bank will remain with the national government.
It will be the bank, Mr. President?
Yes.
What shares? Saan galing yan, Mr. President?
Yeah. Yeah. It will be the unissued shares of, most likely it will be the unissued shares of the bank that will be offered. Although government owns 100%.
Mas alam ni sponsor ito, Mr. President, yung mga listings sa stock exchange. So,
Yes.
how do private corporations do it ba? When they list in the stock exchange, don't they offer for sale in the stock exchange the already issued shares, Mr. President? So these are the shares of the corporation, but the stockholders now are the ones trading, Mr. President.
There's when you do an IPO, there's what they call the primary and secondary offering. The primary being the primary offering going where the proceeds go straight to the company, secondary offering goes straight to the shareholders. So I think depending on the appetite of the whoever's depending on the appetite of the institute or the corporation, those are there are many different variants to the IPO. So it really depends on what the goals are of the, is it the goal is to raise funding for national government, or is it to increase the capital of the bank? So I guess it really depends on what the board decides is their strategy and what for purpose. I can only speculate in the future as to what that might be, but in this bill, it gives them the ability to raise funds through an initial public offering. Without giving up control, of course. It only
Sige
30%.
po. So we keep on returning to the idea that the bank needs to raise funds. Hindi po ba by law we sequestered some of the funds of DBP and surrendered this to the Maharlika Investment Corporation to the tune of
That
25 billion?
that is an equity investment in DBP. Sorry, in Maharlika.
25 billion po, di ba?
Yes,
Tama.
equity investment in Maharlika. Yes.
If the authorized capital stock is only 35B, so that does that mean that the 25B invested by DBP in Maharlika came from its the deposits it held, Mr. President?
These are what they call investable funds. That's where it was derived. As you know, these financial institutions have these investable funds that they have to, that is parked with them, and that they have to invest in certain areas in order to achieve the rate of interest that will allow them to generate a profit.
And could some of these investable funds be in the nature of deposit liabilities?
It is. It is.
Tama,
If it's,
no?
investable funds are basically banks are mostly deposits.
Correct.
Mostly they.
So tama pala.
they're-
Tama po.
Yes.
Opo. So, yung investment ni DBP sa Maharlika did not cause for the request of this increase in the authorized capital stock.
No. There's no-
Independent po ito.
Independent.
Po ito.
I think it's more to make it competitive, also with Land Bank. I mean, if you look at the authorized capital and the amendments made with there, this makes this bank more competitive and more responsive to the needs of their clients.
So at present po pala, the Secretary of Finance is not the chairperson of the board of the DBP.
No, he's all come from the private sector. He's not the chairman now.
So ang chairman would be an appointee of the president, no? So papalitan po natin 'yon. Ganun ang mangyayari. So any other changes in the board composition, Mr. President?
Will also be added. And also the NEDA secretary will also be added to the board.
The secretary will be added.
Yes.
Oh. But the president of the bank, I believe, will be elected by the members of the board of the bank. Is that in our measure, Mr. President? Tama ba yun?
Yes, appointed as director but voted by the board.
So the board will choose from among their members who will be president of the bank. Ganun po ang mangyari.
Yes, that is correct.
Then the Secretary of Finance will be the
Ex officio
ex-officio
chairperson.
member of.
This is in order to, at least one of the benefits of this will be to align the strategic plans of national government with the national goals of government with the strategic plans of the DBP.
Bakit po kaya sa umpisa ay hindi government official yung chairman ng DBP? Bakit kaya? What was the just in case the sponsor knows when the DBP was created, how come
I can only speculate, Your Honor, as to why this was the initial, but it is the opinion of the DBP that their interest would be served better if the DOF chairman if the DOF secretary serves as the ex officio chairman. It would lend more, I guess. weight and credibility, and improve the decision making in terms of, and improve also the policy and the alignment of the objectives between DBP and the national government.
But pagdating po sa Land Bank, si Land Bank from the very start, ang chairman, si Secretary of Finance. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, that is correct.
So there must have been a reason, Mr. President, how come iniba natin ang treatment natin sa DBP sa Land Bank? Maybe sa purposes nila.
It's hard. I wish I could speculate,
Yeah.
but I'm not really sure about why the original. But all I can say is these amendments are based on the recommendations of the DOF and the DBP, and they feel strongly that they will improve the level of service. So I am in favor of that and supportive of their opinions.
Is there no one among our resource persons from the DBP who has some parang
And I think if I can add,
institutional
Yes.
memory of
and also this is also I think relevant, was nauna kasi yung charter ng DBP sa Land Bank. So perhaps the Land Bank themselves, saw that there were these changes that needed to be made, and they were able to address them, or they were able to adjust. So this is really the DBP was really the original, I guess. It was the one that came first. So perhaps, and I'm only speculating, Mr. President, of course.
With that caution, Mr. President, we will note the inputs from our sponsor. So kaya nga, so now we will make the DBP look more like the Land Bank now. So after the amendments, what would still be the distinguishable elements or factors between DBP and Land Bank, or will they look the same already, Mr. President?
Well, I think one of the major differences after this law is that, I guess, the mandate. When you look at the the mandate of Land Bank, it's to provide financial assistance and support services to its priority sectors such as small farmers and fishers, agrarian reform beneficiaries, agri and aqua businesses, and aqua and agri-related projects of the LGUs and GOCCs. DBP will change to infra, social services, MSMEs, and energy, health. So it'll be able to, I think not only will it clarify their mandate, it will also expand it in a way that is more responsive to our national development plans.
Yes, so parang ano pa rin po sila, parang may kanya-kanya pa rin silang mga focus.
Yes.
Focus po, si Land Bank stays the same, farmers, fisher folk, ano pa ba iba?
Agrarian reform beneficiaries.
Agrarian reform beneficiaries, yes. And then the other sectors that the government is concerned about would be DBP.
Yes.
DBP na. Okay, so thank you for that, Mr. President. Ngayon, Mr. President, yes, Majority Leader.
President, if I may interject with the permission of the two gentlemen.
Yes,
Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President. Mentioned a while ago, this is an anterior observation, Mr. President. Mention was made a while ago about the functions of the officialdom of the new DBP, the officers, Mr. President. So I'm just curious. There is a president. Mr. President, there is a president and chief executive officer, but on section 13, in case of a vacancy, temporary absence, or incapacity, or permanent incapacity of the president, there is a need to appoint an officer in charge, wherein there is a vice president. There should be an executive vice president or several vice presidents. So, para saan pa yung vice president kung pag wala ng president, ay mayroon officer in charge? So, how would the officer in charge be selected from among the vice presidents or even from the rank and file? Ngayon ko lang po nakita ito, Mr. President. Maraming vice president ng bangko, pag absent yung president, ay mag-a-appoint ng OIC. So, in terms of functions, hindi kaya magkaroon tayo ng problema kasi considering that this is a big financial institution. Just a query, Mr. President.
Well,
Thank
there's,
you,
if
gentlemen.
should an event like that occur, there's the board who will be able to, the president can come from the board and they can elect someone to govern over the DBP.
The OIC will come from the board.
Yes.
Ganun ang mangyayari po, Mr. President. Ilan po bang board members po ito, Mr. President?
9.
9. Excluding not counting the ex officio chairman?
Including the ex officio chairman.
So ganun po mangyayari, parang so 9, 8 lang, we have to exclude the Secretary of Finance. He cannot be chairman, I cannot be president. So 8, they choose but I think he will vote, no? I think the Secretary of Finance will also vote for who will be the president, but the choice is sa 8 na naiwan doon. And then, in case of temporary incapacity, they can elect an OIC, still following the principle from among the board members. I think that's how I understand the...
Yes, that is correct.
answer.
That is correct.
So the Vice President will never...
I was thinking, Mr. President, of an executive vice president who could probably act in a temporary capacity during the temporary absence of the president. For instance,
Well, that's
attending-
something we could consider as an amendment if you feel strongly about it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Good point.
It's a matter, yes, I think it's a matter of policy, Mr. President. Okay. The president and the CEO of the bank may be removed for cause by the board. Does that removal affect his status as a member of the board?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr.
the-
Does that his removal affect his status?
The president is a member of the board chosen by the board.
Yes.
But the board, that same board can remove the president.
As president,
Yes,
yes.
as president. So,
But he is appointed by the president of the Philippines. So I suppose if he's removed as president,
yes.
as from the position, he still remains
As a board
member of the board.
Okay. That's how we
Yes.
will interpret it. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Kasi the board is appointed by the president.
Mr. President, so of course we because of this measure we revisited the issues about DBP, and we have encountered the reports of some significant loans that they have written off, Mr. President. Number one, totoo ba ito? Are there significant loans that DBP has written off from its books, Mr. President?
Perhaps you could expand. I don't know of any significant write-offs. But we'll continue to check. But as of now, I'm not.
Can the
not aware of any.
DBP resource persons volunteer information on loans that they have written off, Mr. President, from their books?
Of course, we can provide that kind of information. In fact, we can send it now. But
Then, right now, Mr. President?
yes,
And then not in writing, but we have to talk about this, Mr. President. So, kasi ang subscriber ng shares ng DBP, national government, therefore people's money. So, DBP is people's bank. Nagpapautang ng milyon o bilyon. Tapos, merong mga board decision na ira-write off yung utang. So, hindi na babayaran si bank. So, ang hindi binabayaran yung taong bayan. So, may we know if nangyari na ito,
yes.
kanino nangyari ito, at bakit nangyari ito, Mr. President?
It's been according to the DBP. The last write-off has been a long time ago. We'll get the exact details, but not recently. And I think it's also important to note that, of course, in the course of the banking, a bank is a it's a institution that is it's a risk management institution where, of course, there are some you try your best to minimize the level of defaults, of course, and you have mechanisms to minimize that by getting collateral, by getting by securing the loans through hard assets. But in the end, I think there's really no 100%. I mean, in the banking industry, you try to achieve 100%. You don't always achieve 100%, and that's part of the course of business. But I think based on my talks with the DBP, of recent memory, there has not been, or of recent history, there has not been a major write-off in the bank. So,
Yes.
as of now.
And of course, when they render the report or give us the report, they can state the year and then under whose leadership, kasi hindi naman sa current leadership yan. I mean, klarong-klaro po yun. But I think the current leadership, since this is still the People's Bank, if asked, should tell the people, ito yung nangyari 10 years ago, 15 years ago, billion, write-off, ito po yung umutang, hindi na po siya kailangang magbayad nitong billion na utang, at ano yung binigay na reason nung board na dati, hindi yung present board. But just a general question, Mr. President. Pag re-write off na ng DBP or ng government bank ang isang utang, tama ba ako sa sinabi ko na hindi na babayaran yun nung umutang, Mr. President?
When you do such a thing, it's always without prejudice to collection efforts. But in terms of your declaration, if there's your financial statements, if you don't believe, if you want to be as accurate as possible to the real financial situation. So if the management deems the collection of this a certain receivable as for whatever reason, bankruptcy of the company, or for something happened to the original whoever availed of the loan, then that's if they decide that it's not the chances of a collection, then financially you have to write it off so that your financial statements reflect the financial health of your. That's not without prejudice. You can still collect it, yes. But to be financially prudent in your reporting, writing it off is a tool that they use.
Yes, and then in the effort to collect, what if they actually collect something, although let's say not the full amount, it will be subsequently reported in the books as what?
Yes, it will be income. It will be part of the income of the bank.
Income ba yan?
Yes.
Income. Okay.
In accounting terms, maybe they call it extraordinary income.
Sige. Okay, it will be reflected. So yan siguro. I think that DBP...
can I just add, just for the record, write-offs are also subject to COA audit as an additional safeguard. Just as a
COA, not COA approval, but COA audit. Audit.
Yeah.
Sige po. Is part of the COA audit making sure that there are efforts to collect initiated by the DBP?
Yes, there's always. I think every bank has that. That is also part of their. Ongoing operations. It's always trying to collect, no matter what. There's always tools by which they can collect from their debtors, but from their clients. But of course, it's not always an exact science.
But Mr. President, how come when we ask for a report from DBP of debt write-offs, bakit hindi po sila makabigay agad? I mean, di ba dapat computerized na po lahat yan, Mr. President? Lalo na walang nangyari recently.
I think, I'm not sure about the circumstances, but they reassured me. And it should be, because these are not difficult. I mean, that should be part of the record. So I don't know specifically what happened, Mr. President, but rest assured that this information can be given. Soon.
Mr. President, kasi merong Section 34 which is about the transfer of assets and liabilities of the DBP. Meron ditong what is the interpretation or explanation of the sponsor on Section 34? What is this all about, Mr. President?
On Section 34 of Senate Bill number 2864, the provision can be interpreted as to adopt a policy of yielding to the authority of the ultimate owner of DBP as a GOCC, the state acting through the national government. In any case, the provision will not result in taxpayer bailout of private commercial interests, since under Section 7 of the proposed charter, the national government would at all times retain at least 70% of the outstanding capital stock of DBP. The possibility of write-off is embedded in the terms of Section 34, but is left ultimately to the discretion of the national government, in the same way that the terms of the transfer in general is subject to the mutual approval of the bank and national government.
Section 34, Mr. President, I'm sorry to admit, I think I need to read this 20 times to understand this, Mr. President. Pero just to get from the sponsor, there is a mention of appropriate authorities, page 14, line 9. Who are those appropriate authorities, Mr. President?
Yes, actually, I spoke to them. I spoke to the DBP about this particular, and it's part of the amendments that we'll be proposing is to remove this from the, as it is not part of the existing charter of other GFIs such as LBP, Land Bank of the Philippines. So,
The entire section?
so yes, 34 and 35 of the committee report. Yes.
What would be our upcoming action on sections 34 and 35? We will delete them?
Deletion.
We will delete them. So, okay. Sige po, hindi na ako magtatanong sa section na hindi ko naintindihan kung i-delete din po natin. Opo. So, Mr. President, ang authorized, so magli-listing din tayo sa stock exchange. So, at all times, national government will own 70% of the total outstanding capital stock. So ano yung sabihin? 30% lang po yung iti-trade sa ano?
Basically, when they do an offering, they can only sell a stake of 30% at most. There's a ceiling in a supermajority of the ownership.
So there will now be private individuals or even private corporations which will be stockholders or co-owners of DBP.
Yes, that is correct.
Up to the extent of owners of DBP.
Yes, that is correct.
Up to the extent of a ceiling of 30%.
Yes, that is correct.
So, Mr. President, if I could suspend my interpellation until after I get to see the written report on the loan write-offs of the DBP, plus, of course, a mention of their subsequent action siguro, effort to collect on the loan, Mr. President. And sabihin na natin na these write-offs did not happen during the term of the current leadership. So, wag po silang matakot that they will be blamed, wag silang mahiya that they will be blamed because hindi naman ito nangyari sa time nila. But nagtataka lang kami how come a report is so difficult to get. Meron po akong nabasa na, or chismis lang ba ito, na nung Lehman Brothers collapse, tinamaan daw ang DBP. Can we get an official response from the DBP? Spread into the records of the Philippine Senate. Sana accurate po ang sagot.
May exposure ba kayo sa Lehman Brothers? What? In what form? So I believe it was around that time during the crisis, that Asian crisis, I believe 2008, the DBP purchased a bond issued by Lehman Brothers, I believe. I'm not, but there was exposure. You bought it 2008 or? Sorry, my mistake. I said 2008. They bought it earlier. And as you know, in 2008, as we all know, that 2008, that's when the financial crisis hit. But yes, there was exposure to a bond issued by Lehman Brothers, and it was purchased before the crisis of 2008.
Magkano po? Magkano ang tama ng DBP?
Yes, we can provide you with the exact. I don't want to give details that aren't 100% correct. But more or less, what we know is that they did purchase prior to 2008, prior to the crisis, bonds issued by Lehman Brothers, and are of course pursuing. They had pursued the receivables from that, but unfortunately, there is no closure yet because, as you know. Lehman Brothers collapsed, one of the banks that collapsed during the crisis.
When the DBP bought bonds, parang nagpautang din sila, no? The issuer of the bond is the debtor, di ba? Tama? Nagpautang yun, di ba? Parang pautang din po yun.
Well, no. When you buy the bonds, it's you're deploying usually banks, you do that. They deploy investable funds to purchase various financial instruments. And I think, to be fair, at the time, Lehman Brothers was up to that point where it was exposed in the 2008. It was considered a very safe investment, probably the high grade investment prior to what happened in 2008 because of the subprime crisis.
Yes.
But prior to that, to be fair, there's the Lehman Brothers prior to that was considered a very safe investment. Unfortunately, we all know what happened during the crisis.
Underlying a bond issuance is actually a loan transaction, di ba? Kasi a bond is a promise to pay principal plus interest, di ba?
Yeah, it's basically, in a way,
okay,
yes. It's a different way. Yes, it's basically a loan.
Ngayon, for those of us interested in the documentation of DBP's engagement with Lehman Brothers, where can we find this? Is there a brochure, a study, a paper issued, or a website on that, Mr. President?
Sorry, a website on.
Can we ask the DBP? Ito yung the DBP's exposure to Lehman Brothers. I'm sure, no pumutok siguro yan, tinamaan sila. We cannot even state the amount kung magkano. I'm sure they initiated some investigation. And I'm sure they documented the results of their investigation. For those of us who are interested in pursuing the issue or knowing more about the issue, is there some publication that we can access, Mr. President? A book, a magazine, a report,
of course,
a website?
I'm sure we can always look into, we can submit because there's always reporting every year. Banks are required to do these reporting every year, so I'm sure we can look at the archives and find it. And if I knew in advance, I would have prepared.
They confirm
Yes.
it that
They can
there
find
is-
it. They can find it. So hopefully we can if we can get it in advance so that we can ask them to retrieve these files because that was 16 years ago.
Yes.
So it's,
kaya nga, Mr. President, and then we are, siyempre, and they were, siguro at that time, their authorized capital stock was 35 billion.
Yeah.
Pa rin. But now, we want them 300 billion. Yeah. And then we give them authority to even increase their authorized capital stock on their own. May mga ganitong pangyayari na we need to understand before we approve everything, Mr. President. Yun lang yung concern ko, Mr. President. I just need to understand, but I don't know if that is shared by our colleagues.
I think
Mr.
to be
President.
fair, during when we do when we do our actuarial analysis of our investments, it's always prudent to have a wide range of investments in various, perhaps even internationally, locally. This is just part of the prudent risk management. So. It's nothing. There's nothing irregular about investing in international institutions. This is also to spread the risk. This is also for the benefit of the depositors, and also To be fair, and also it was the financial crisis happened in 2008. The time that they invested in these bonds, I'm not sure, but it might have probably it was even way before that. So it could have been that it's been I'm just speculating, but. It could be that they've been investing in these instruments for a much longer time and they've been benefiting them for a long time. But as in, you always have when it comes to risk management, there are always these occurrences that might happen that you cannot anticipate. So it's all part of the risk management strategy of the bank. It's hard, you wouldn't say that it's deliberate, but the reality is that is precisely why it could happen locally. There could have been some issue that happens locally. It just so happened that it happened internationally. Not to say that they didn't invest prudently. It's just that that's part of, that's precisely why you have a wide range of investments. So should something happen like that there's some sort of crisis or something, at least your risk is spread out. So, I mean, just to be fair
Yes,
to the bank.
but for those of us interested, meron po ba public?
But yes, we can provide the information. It's just, we
Last
just need
question
time.
na lang siguro, Miss, for this particular time. May we know what lessons DBP learned from their hit from the Lehman collapse, Mr. President?
I think it's the same lesson that we all learned. The issue of subprime was something that very few people up to the last minute were able to anticipate. The banks were issuing, debt that was grade AAA, but it wasn't, even though it was grade AAA, the reality is the underlying assets of those bonds were not AAA, but they were declared as investment grade. And a lot of people did not see that. They always assume mortgages are very safe instruments because people are buying houses and people pay that. Unfortunately, during that crisis, that's what happened. And I don't think, to be fair, very few people were able to anticipate that happening during the time. Of course, we can come up, I'm sure the DBP can readily explain their investment strategies. But on my part, I understand why they would spread out their investments in international and institutions. A lot of people were affected by that, not just a lot of people bought instruments that they thought was AAA, that was graded by Moody's, it was graded by very respected agencies as AAA, and yet it didn't turn out that way. But again, that's part of risk management. That's not to say that there was fund misuse, but I think that's just part of the banking. That's the part of the banking industry, that there is risk involved, and sometimes you can't control every aspect of your investments.
So, yung mga AAA po are given by rating agencies, almost all of them, of course, foreign, non-Filipino. So, you mean to say our best bankers, our best investors at the DBP merely relied blindly on the ratings given by these foreign rating agencies? Or wala ba tayong ka-effort to say na, oops, teka muna, hindi yan AAA?
No, I think to be fair, it wasn't just, there are several rating agencies who declared subprime as investment grade instruments. So, to be fair, it's not blind. I wouldn't, maybe the terminology of blindly would be unfair to them. I think, it was that was a very particular crisis caused by a series of events that a lot of people were not able to anticipate. Even the best financial analysts in the world, all the major banks were not able to anticipate that. So, to be fair to the DB, I'm just saying in terms of if we're going to question how they handled that, I think, to be fair, it was something that was internationally. It was a circumstance that was internationally very few people were able to predict.
Yes, almost the entire world was fooled by
Yes. And to be fair,
these reputable rating agencies, Mr. President.
yes, and to be fair, Mr. President, all these we learned. A lot of financial agencies learned. The BSP learned from this crisis, and they've adjusted their risk management policies to reflect what we learned from this crisis. As we do in many financial crises, there's always lessons to be learned. And the BSP has revised their policies with regards to the investment activities of our GFIs. And the risk of such an event occurring again, of course, will be very minimal.
Sige po, but ulitin ko po, for those of us, maybe hindi lang itong representation, maybe mga nanonood sa ating mga kababayan natin, who want to read up on this particular issue, I hope the DBP can point to us the reference material or give us the reference material. So we'll know what happened, how much. Bakit yung amount, Mr. President, hindi natin masabi? Kasi it happened
I think
decades ago. How much was the financial hit of or setback of DBP from its investment or bond subscription with Lehman Brothers?
I've been made aware that the investment was $90 million US. Yes, $90 million US.
9 or
90
90?
90
90 million. Okay, at that time siguro, we can safely put it at 50 pesos siguro by that, during that time. Okay. So thank you for that information, Mr. President. Yun lang po yung gusto lang namin po malaman dito yung mga debt write-offs din po. At kasi nga, we are going to grant the DBP a new charter. Siguro, it's just right to review past performance. But that's my logical approach, Mr. President. We're just looking at past performance. Parang budget season din ito na, how did you use your budget? So, during the time that you
Yes.
had authorized capital stock of 35 billion pesos, this was your mandate. How did you use your capital stock? How did you use your mandate? How do you exercise your mandate? Ganon din po, Mr. President. So,
Yes, Mr.
yun
President.
na lang po,
Yes.
yun na lang po siguro yung pending request ko po on materials on the two issues, the debt write-offs and then the Lehman Brothers exposure, Mr. President. But in the meantime, yes, in the meantime, with the permission of the Senate President, if we could suspend, tapos pag nasabit na, madaanan na natin, this representation can manifest na kung wala na po akong further interpellation, pwede rin po mangyari yun. But pwede rin po magka-further interpellation, pero kakonti na lang po, limited na po dun sa dalawang topics na yun, Mr. President. So with that, Mr. President, this representation would like to suspend this interpellation on this measure.
Thank you, Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2804.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. The Chair would like to seek a minute suspension. Session suspended.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the additional reference of business, this representation would like to acknowledge some guests of Senator Binay from the local government unit of Alabat, Quezon. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the additional reference of business.
Secretary, please read the additional reference business.
Second additional reference of business, committee report. Committee report 329 by the Committee on Ways and Means upon the recommendation of its subcommittee on the rationalization of the mining fiscal regime on Senate number 2826, introduced by Senator Ejercito, entitled An Act Enhancing the Fiscal Regime for Large-Scale Metallic Mining Industry, amending for the purpose Sections 34B, 130D, 287, and the subjects of Title 6 and Chapter 7 thereof, and creating the new sections 151A, 151B, 151C, 151D, and 287A, all under Republic Act number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration House number 8937, sponsor Senator Ejercito.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 329 on Senate Bill number 2826. This is the bill just read, enhancing the fiscal regime for metallic mining industry. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2826 under Committee Report number 329.
Is there an objection? Motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill number 2826 is now in order. The Secretary will read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the record the whole text thereof.
An Act Enhancing the Fiscal Regime for the Large-Scale Metallic Mining Industry, amending for the purpose Sections 34B, 130D, 287, and the subjects of Title 6 and Chapter 7 thereof, and creating new sections 151A, 151B, 151C, 151D, and 287A, all under RA 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, I move to recognize Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito, the Chairman of the Subcommittee on the Fiscal Regime for the Mining Industry, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Senator Ejercito is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, good afternoon. It is my distinct honor to rise today to sponsor and champion Senate Bill number 2826 under Committee Report number 329, or the Enhanced Fiscal Regime for Large-Scale Metallic Mining Act. one of the priority measures identified in the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council in the 19th Congress. As the Philippine economy continues to recover from the lingering effects of the economic downturn brought about by the recent global pandemic, it is crucial that we leverage every available resource to strengthen and revitalize our economic standing. This proposed measure helps to answer that call. The mining sector stands out as an industry we can leverage to achieve this aim. With the latest data presented by the Department of Finance, a total of 115.66 billion of taxes, fees, and royalties were collected by the national and local government units for a period covering the year 2020 to 2022. This means that an average collection of 38.55 billion every year. Mr. President, our nation's economic managers see vast potential for growth in this sector, which remains underutilized and underdeveloped. According to the Mines and Geosciences Bureau of the DNR, out of the 9 million hectares identified as having high mineral potential across the Philippine archipelago, only 2.52% is covered by mining tenements. Moreover, NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, in a recently held forum on the revitalization of the industry, underscored that mining had a modest contribution of 0.5% of the nation's gross domestic product, or GDP, by the end of 2023, which points to the fact that there is still room for significant growth. In addition, it is undeniable that the mining sector contributes to the generation of additional jobs for our kababayans, which represents 0.45% to the total employment of 212,247 jobs in 2023. It is only noteworthy to mention the mandatory social environmental expenditures of the mining sector, which covers the annual Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, safety and health programs, annual social development and management programs totaling 26.05 billion from 2012 to 2021. With our nation having some of the world's largest mineral reserves in nickel, copper, cobalt, chromite, and gold, among other precious metals, the Philippines is strategically poised into the growing global demand for green technologies. By responsibly harnessing our abundant mineral resources, we can ensure maximum benefit for the Filipino people while contributing to a more sustainable future. Mr. President, the strategy framework outlined in the Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028 identifies the revitalization of our industrial capacity through science, technology, and innovation-led industrialization as key objectives. The revitalization seeks to achieve several interconnected outcomes: the creation of higher quality employment opportunities, the expansion of our domestic market and supplier network, the development of robust value chains, and the enhancement of linkages across sectors. Mr. President, we wholeheartedly support this strategic vision. The bill before us today serves as a critical building block realizing the objectives of the Philippine Development Plan. This measure seeks to foster an enabling policy environment, especially with an eye towards being more competitive with our regional competitors. By correcting the current mining tax regime that is fraught with complications, this shall enable the state to harness the full potential of our national mineral resources by reforming how the government derives its revenue share from the development and utilization of its resources. This bill proposes a modernized tax regime specifically for large-scale mining activities, those involving exploration, feasibility, development, utilization, and processing, under a mineral agreement or financial or technical assistance agreement as defined in Republic Act No. 7942 of the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. The proposed regime is designed to be fairer, simpler, more competitive, and sustainable. This measure empowers the government to levy more revenues and royalties on all mining operations, whether inside or outside mineral reservations. Furthermore, the measure introduces a windfall profits tax based on simplified 5-tier rates ranging from 1% to 10%. This proposed concept will enable the government to have a large share of the profits in case when metal prices are high and mining companies are earning more. This will also streamline compliance and administration for both industry and government, while minimizing opportunities for aggressive accounting practices. This measure also seeks to strengthen safeguards against tax minimization. It limits the prospects of thin capitalization by setting a cap on how much companies can rely on debt financing to reduce their taxes through deductible interest expenses. Additionally, this bill also seeks to protect against ring fencing by treating each mining operation of a company with multiple projects as a separate taxable entity, preventing them from offsetting profits from one project with losses from another to lower their overall tax bill. Should these reforms come to fruition, the DOF estimates that the proposal will garner an average of 6.26 billion annual additional income for our nation's coffers. For our local government units, whose concerns were highlighted by our Senate President Francis Chises Godero, this measure establishes a framework that streamlines the speedy and timely release of their rightful share of taxes generated from mining royalties and other fees. This will empower LGUs to utilize the revenue from mining resources for the benefit of their constituents in a more timely and efficient manner. Kasama rin sa pagpapalawig ng suportang makukuha ay ang royalty na makukuha ng mga indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples or ICCs and IPs na isusuma base sa 1% ng total gross revenues of minerals produced from the ancestral domain. Finally, Mr. President, this bill champions transparency and accountability in the management of our nation's mineral resources by institutionalizing a robust mechanism for public disclosure and scrutiny of extractive industry data. This aligns us with international best practices, ensuring that the wealth generated from our resources is managed openly and responsibly for the benefit of all Filipinos. Ginoong Pangulo, habang kinikilala natin ang potensyal ng industriyang ito na palaguin ang ating ekonomiya, mahalagang balansehin nito sa mga karapatan at interes ng iba pang sektor ng lipunan. Umaasa tayo na sa pamamagitan ng pagpapalakas ng mga alituntunin para sa transparency at accountability, matutulungan natin ang DNR, mga LGU at maging ang civil society na pangalagaan ang ating kalikasan. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, the passage of this bill represents a pivotal moment in our nation's journey towards a more prosperous and sustainable future. While we know that this won't fix everything that needs fixing in the industry, we take heart knowing that by enacting these reforms, we are not only modernizing our mining tax regime, but also laying the foundation for responsible resource management that benefits all Filipinos. This legislation demonstrates our commitment to maximizing the value of our mineral wealth, fostering economic growth, and ensuring that future generations inherit a nation rich in both natural resources and opportunities. Let us seize this moment to create a legacy of responsible stewardship and shared prosperity. I urge my esteemed colleagues to join me in supporting this proposed measure. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Hercito, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2826. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, on September 9 this year, 2024, the Philippine Senate adopted proposed Senate Resolution number 631, the resolution commending the Masungi Geo-Reserve project for being conferred the Inspire Award during the 2022 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Action Award held in Bonn, Germany. Today, we are honored to be joined here at the plenary by the outstanding team behind the Masungi Geo-Reserve project led by Ms. Anne Dumalyang, trustee of the Masungi Geo-Reserve Foundation, together with the following representatives from the team and community: Mr. Juan Parian, Mr. Francia Abe, Mr. Willing Rotacio, Mr. Rohel Picol, Aaron Sugitan, and Ms. Ana Reyes.
To our honored guest, welcome to your Philippine Senate.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the session for 1 minute to allow our esteemed guests to accept the adopted resolution. Mr. President, I may invite our colleagues to join the Senate President and awardees at the rostrum.
Session suspended for a minute. Resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2804 under Committee Report number 308. This is the bill on the new DBP Charter. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate, I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? There being none, period of interpolation for this bill is hereby closed.
With no committee amendment, I move to open the period of individual amendment and recognize Senator Mark Villar to propose his individual amendment.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Senator Villar is recognized to propound individual amendments.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I would like to introduce some amendments to further refine the new DBP Charter. On page 2, line 3, delete section 5A of. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? Hearing none, same is approved.
On page 7, line 24, delete and may be removed by the board for cause and replace it with pursuant to the provisions of Republic Act number 10149. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
On page 14, from lines 6 to 19, delete the entire sections 34 and 35 and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the proposed amendment is hereby approved.
Thank you, and that is all, Mr. President.
Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2804.
Any objection? There being none, motion is hereby approved. Session is suspended.
That we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2451 under Committee Report number 139. This is the bill on the Ligtas Pinoy Centers Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, having sponsored the measure, I move to open the period of interpellation and recognize the sponsor, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, and to interpellate the Honorable Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Pimentel III.
Any objection? There being none. Senator Estrada is recognized to sponsor the bill and to interpolate. Senator, our Minority Leader, Senator Pimentel. Both gentlemen are recognized, and you may proceed, Senator Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this permission of our sponsor.
Yes, Mr. President, before that,
Yes, if you have a statement to make, yes, sir.
I would like to acknowledge the presence of our resource persons here present. We are joined by officials from various government agencies to help us in defending and steering the passage of this measure. We have officials from the Office of Civil Defense, Department of Public Works and Highways, Department of Social Welfare and Development, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, Department of Budget and Management, and the Asia Foundation Agap Banta Coalition Civil Society Organization. That's all, Mr. Chair. Mr. President.
Duly noted.
So if I may proceed, Mr. President. Ang pinag-uusapan natin ngayon ay isang panukala na magpapatayo ng evacuation center sa kada syudad at kada
Bayan.
munisipyo
Opo.
o bayan. So, isuma total po natin. Ilan po ba yun? Ilan po ang cities and
Approximately
municipalities?
mga 1,700 municipalities and cities nationwide, Mr. President.
Sige po. So, yan ang plano natin. Actually, napakaganda ng plano natin, Mr. President. So, it's just a question of the why and then the how much siguro. Siguro umpisa natin, why are we doing this when nasa books ng gobyerno, may assets na yung gobyerno ng mga buildings eh. So, why are we Why did we think of still building evacuation centers?
Well, Mr. President, the main purpose of this bill is to establish and maintain safe, fully equipped, and fully operational evacuation centers for every city, municipality in our country. And this is to provide the immediate and temporary accommodation for individuals displaced from their homes due to various emergencies, including human-induced disasters, calamities, or other environmental and climatic events, Mr. President.
Sa libro ng mga assets ng gobyerno, wala pa bang mga existing structures na masasabi nating pwede nang mag-serve sa purpose na ito, contemporary shelters?
Meron naman po, Mr. President, katulad po sa, if I will break it down, sa NCR, base po sa budget nung nakarang taon, ang NCR meron na pong 2 evacuation centers, am I correct? Ano na? 1 ongoing project and 1 completed project. Sa Cordillera Autonomous Region, meron na 4. Region 1, meron pong 2. Region 2, meron 7. Region 3, wala. Okay, ang total po ng mga evacuation centers ay na kompleto na. Kompleto na po ay 459 nationwide, Mr. President. Out of the 459, Mr. President, 412 evacuation centers have already been completed, and the rest, yung 45, are still ongoing, Mr. President.
Sino po ang nagbi-build po nitong 459?
DPWH po.
Pagkatapos po ma-build, ito ba ay sinosurrender nila sa, dinodonate sa
Yes,
LGU?
sinosurrender na po sa local government unit.
Through donation, through use of frac, what is it? What is the...
Meron pong memorandum of agreement, Mr. President.
Pero ang books, yung asset kasi yan eh. When we build a structure, asset yan eh. Kanino siyang books na asset? Sa national government or doon na sa local government? Dito sa bill.
Let me browse the memorandum of agreement, Mr. President.
Kanya ba? Sa asset ba ni...
Sa ano? Yung bandang huli.
So kung mo walang ba?
Wala. According to the memorandum of agreement, there is no such provision, Mr. President.
So asset pa rin siya ng national
So I
government.
believe that it is still the asset of the
Yun yung sa
national
yun yung
government.
sa currently nagawa at saka ginagawa.
Yes.
Pero sa panukala po natin, ano mangyari? Ano yung ating na-envision na ginagawa natin sila ang LGU pero magiging kanila ba?
I think it's still the same arrangement, Mr. President. The assets will still belong to the national government.
Pero kunyari po, merong nasira siya, kailangan ng repair or kailangan ng maintenance. Kanino po 'yon? Sa ating panukala muna, sa panukala natin.
Well, the maintenance and operations will be with the LGU, Mr. President. So kung merong nasira na parte ng gusali,
Oo.
ang LGU po ang gagastos para sa
Kasi
pagpapagawa o pagme-maintain nung
Kasi pagdating, Mr. President, sa sira or let us say repairs, pwede natin makategorize siya sa dalawa eh. Sometimes yung mga maliliit na bagay
Yes.
at yung malalaking bagay. So, Pati ba kunyari, malaki, kunyari, nagkaroon ng, although evacuation center ito, anong malay natin sa isang earthquake, may isang wing doon mag-collapse. Kanino responsibility po to rebuild the collapsed portion or segment of the evacuation center? LGU or national?
I think it is still with the LGU. Let me invite your attention, Mr. President, to Section 10 of this bill, which says operation and management. The LGUs concerned shall be primarily responsible for the operation, supervision, and management of evacuation centers established under this Act. The local sanggunian shall promulgate rules, guidelines, and procedures for the use and operation of the evacuation center under its jurisdiction. The guidelines shall prescribe rules on the utilization of the evacuation center for other activities or purposes authorized by the LG, provided that the utilization of the evacuation center and its amenities for such authorized activities or purposes shall only be temporary, with corresponding provisions of cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing immediately after use. So and so. So I believe it.
I don't think the heading of Section 10 is operation and management, Mr. President. Ang katanungan ko is, okay, si DPWH ang nagbi-build. Na-build na. What sentence po?
Mr. Minority Leader. The last paragraph of the Section 10, which I stated, shall read, the LGUs shall be responsible for facilitating the general cleaning and repair of facilities, including fumigation, ensuring that the facility is safe for its intended use.
Yes, so yung phrase na repair of facilities includes the two meanings of repair. The simple repair and then
The major.
even the major. So yan po ang ating meaning dito.
Opo.
Okay, I hope
Sana po kayanan nung LGU's concern, because my concern is with the 4th, 5th, and 6th class municipalities who have limited funds, no? Baka pagka halimbawa mag-construct ang DPWH ng isang malaki evacuation center sa isang 6th class municipalities, 6th class municipality, tapos bigla lumindol, nasira yung structure, wala silang pambabayad nung pagpaparepair. And I think tatakbo pa rin sa national government yan para humingi ng pondo.
Let the MOA be flexible na lang,
Yes.
Mr. President. Ganun na lang siguro. But may I have a point of inquiry sa ating secretariat. I think we passed a law. Naging law ba yung nag-BICAM kami na we limited the classes of municipalities only up to 5th class?
Yeah, that is
Naging
what I
law
heard.
na ba yun? So that we, pag kasi kung law na yun, we will now stop using 6th class kasi
Yes.
wala na yata ang 6th class eh. May we find out lang? Check, okay. Kasi,
Yes, I understand. I understand.
Do you remember that?
Because, during my time as president of the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, way back in 1998, I was meron pa hong 6th class municipality, Mr. President. And lately, I heard that
Yes,
tinanggal na yata yung 6th class municipality.
Sa
Nalimit na lang.
BICAM kasi I moved
Okay.
for that eh. I moved for
Alright.
that na kasi isa na lang yung naiwan sa 6, sabi ko isama na
isa
siya
na lang munisipyo?
sa 6 kaya isama na siya sa 5th. RA 11964. Okay, so yan pa.
So, hanggang 5th na lang tayo.
Hanggang 5th na lang po tayo ang ating classification.
So, may I know from the gentleman kung magkano yung, how did you classify the 4th and 5th? Sa income ba? Sa income?
Yes,
Alright.
income din. Ang income din, in-increase nga eh.
Yeah.
Yung bagong classification kasi halos isa na lang yung naiiwan sa 6, sabi, isama na natin.
Correct.
Isama na siya kasi below na rin naman siya sa threshold.
Yes,
So ganun pa nangyari. So Mr. President, ang tanong, kasi sabi po nating sponsor, temporary or transitory, ano lang naman to, use occupation eh.
Yes.
So, di ba ngayon, pwede na yung classrooms?
You know, what
schools
they did,
pala, schools.
what the DPWH did was to construct a structure within a 3,000 square meter, parang tinatawag lang multipurpose hall, na meron pong, habang kunwari wala akong kalamidad, siyempre wala naman nakatira dyan na mga evacuees, pwede ho maglaro ng basketball. Meron silang basketball court na pwede paglaruan ng mga kababayan natin doon. It's also under Republic Act 10821, so Section 5. This is the Children's Emergency Relief and Protection Act, sponsored by Senator Pia Cayetano. Ang nakalagay dito, evacuation centers, only in cases where there is no other available place or structure which can be used as a general evacuation center, may a school or child development center be used as an evacuation center.
Ayun.
Well, ang kinakwento ko po kanina, Mr. President, yung pinakita po sa akin ng mga tiga DPWH when I was briefed with regard to this measure, they have already constructed around 27% of the evacuation centers nationwide. Okay? With ang mga nagdo-donate, yun nga yung mga LGUs ang nag-identify nung venue. So, sa isang evacuation center, meron ng basketball court. Just in case na wala naman nakatirang mga evacuees doon, pwedeng magamit for another purpose. Pero, pag merong kalamidad, halimbawa, may bagyo, sunog, may baha, ang may prioridad, yung mga evacuees. Doon po sila ibabahay.
Since meron na rin namang report na 400 plus na yung na-build natin, wala ba tayong picture, Mr. President, na pwede natin i-flash
pwede ba
na
i-flash?
makita natin? Do we have DPWH resource person?
Yes, yes, Mr. President.
Did the DPWH come up with a parang standard plan?
Yes. Meron po, Mr.
Standard?
President. Yes.
So, okay, if it's standard, so what is the minimum land area needed para
3,000,
malaman ng
Mr.
LGUs?
President.
Ha? Apo.
3,000.
3,000 square meters.
If I can show you the...
Hindi kaya? Hindi natin kaya? Kasi we want the people to know
Yes.
para makita nila.
Pwede ba? Maliit eh.
Ano ba tawag dito? It's a floor plan, but tawag mo pa dito floor. What do we call this? Ayan. Ayan, pictures na of the built. Floor plan na. Ito. Lumabas nga na hindi pare-pareho, Mr. President. Kaya nga ako nagtanong kung standard eh. Ito, standard daw ito. Oh. What we are seeing different we are seeing now right now please wag mo nang galawin yung previous slide please. Yan. So yan, that is supposed to be now the standard design for the DPWH multipurpose evacuation centers. Is that just artist rendition or a rendering or a picture of a real structure? Picture yan? May we know, Mr. President? Iba na kasing mundo ngayon, Mr. President eh. Hindi ko na ma-distinguish ang picture or is this a picture of an actual?
It's only a picture. That is not the actual structure. That is only the actual design, Mr. President.
Yes. Okay. So and then kanina may pictures tayo of I think actual buildings na medyo malayo from the so-called standard design. So I hope the DPWH can get its act together,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, according to our resource persons, yung mga lumang design, 2020 pa ho yun. Siguro it was designed by a laid-back architect, Mr. President. Sana standard?
So, Mr. President, nakita ko tong inabot po nating sponsor na NHA DPWH Revised Standard Permanent Evacuation Center / Multipurpose Covered Court, showing the ground floor plan and the second or part of the second floor plan. Meron po from our. So, as I understand it, this is mostly open space.
Yes, Mr. President.
Ano na
Open
mangyari?
space yan. You're
So-
correct, Mr. President.
Okay,
But
so
what I-
since
But what I am worried about is that itong mga luma, wala naman basketball court dito.
wala nga, wala.
Building lang. How many evacuees can they accommodate? 500 lang. Dito sa bago, 530. Mas malito, mas malaki yun. But, excuse me, Mr. President, in our budget, to 2024, may mga basketball court na. Lahat. Alright. According, I've been interviewing our resource persons. In our budget, itong 2024 budget, lahat po yan, may malaki na, may mga basketball courts. Just in case na walang evacuees, katulad nga sinabi ko kanina, pwede nilang gamitin. Unlike itong mga ito, wala hong, yung mga nauna, wala hong mga basketball courts yan.
Mr. President, the majority leader wants to be recognized. Mr. President, the majority leader wants to be recognized.
The majority leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I just want to butt in to share some of my little experience here. I think before we talk of the design, we have to agree on the use. If you're talking of the design, perhaps the template is the decades-old evacuation center in Ligao City in Albay. That was done by through a grant from the Japanese government. And when there is no calamity use, it's being used as a trade center. Tahian, marami nagtatrabaho. Pero kanina po pinag-usapan, Mr. President, and the good sponsor would probably, both gentlemen would probably agree, na bawat evacuation center will be, under Section 10, will be managed and operated by the LGU concerned. So that would mean that the utilization of the same is limited to the LGU concern, because that would be turned over to the LGU by the DPWH. Am I correct, good sponsor?
Yes, you are
Yan
correct,
ang
Mr. President.
magmamanage. Pero, in reality, once a disaster strikes, a strong calamity hits an LGU, for instance, as we speak right now, Canlaon City is being badgered by the Canlaon volcano eruption. If there is an evacuation center in Canlaon City, people will not use that. They would rather flock to an area 14 kilometers away, which is La Castellana. Or they would probably go to an area as far as 45 kilometers, which is San Carlos City, Negros Occidental. So ang gagamitin nila, yung ibang evacuation center, similar to the place of residence of our good minority leader. Once a flood strikes Tumana, Barangay Tumana, people will not go to the Tumana Evacuation Center, but will go to Concepcion 1. So what I'm saying is this. The utilization of an evacuation center should be premised on other residents coming from other towns utilizing the same. Di ba, Mr. Good Sponsor? So hindi lang tiga San Juan ang gagamit ng evacuation center nila, kung hindi yung mga karatig lugar pa.
Alam niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, there are some mayors for example, in Metro Manila, I became a mayor. If I construct my own evacuation center, locally funded, and that, for me, that is exclusively for my constituents. Wala akong pakialam sa karatig bayan ko. Dahil pondo po ng aming bayan yan. So, as mayor, of course, I will give priority to my constituents and not my constituents outside of my area of jurisdiction. Meron po mga, hindi ko naman sinasabing lahat ng mayors ganun ang thinking, pero I think majority of them, siyempre pag locally funded, pera ng bayan niya, siyempre hindi nila pagagamit yung bibigyan nila prioridad yung kanilang mga nasasakupan. Yun lang po yung aking opinion, Ginoong Pangulo.
You're correct. I totally agree, Mr. President. Subalit, ang kalamidad po ay hindi lamang nakatuon dun sa isang jurisdiksyon. Halimbawa po nag-intensity 3 sa Oriental Mindoro sa isang bayan, siguro po 7 bayan kagad yung tatamaan. So yung evacuation center mo ay malamang hindi magamit ng sarili mong constituents, yung constituents mo maghahanap nung mas ligtas na lugar. And we're now referring to not just an adjacent but an LGU far from the place of the center of destruction. For instance, nung lumindol sa Dagupan, hindi naman sa Dagupan ka magtatago kasi may mga aftershocks yan. You'd rather go to as far as Lingayen or farther to be safe. So what I'm saying is this: would the good gentleman agree to the proposition that evacuation centers should have an inter-LGU common use scheme that would enable other LGUs to utilize the same? Ang problema lang, tama po yung pinag-usapan sa Section 10, ang nagme-maintain at gumagastos ay yung host LGU. Yung host LGU, ginamit, nilinis, pinondohan, kuryente, tubig, kompleto, pero yung i-host nila coming from other jurisdictions. Would that be a natural occurrence, good sponsor, or?
Yes, I agree with the Majority Floor Leader. And if I may invite your attention, on page 7 of this bill, on line 1, it states that the LGUs may enter into memorandum of agreements with other LGUs for the shared use of said evacuation centers as the need arises. LGUs may also enter into contracts that would be beneficial for the evacuation centers, including but not limited to the enhancement of amenities, upgrading of building capacity, among others, Mr. President. So pwede po magkaroon ng sharing as long as meron pong LGUs between the local government units.
Correct. I totally agree, Mr. President. For instance, nung pumutok yung Taal Volcano a few years ago, umabot po yung mga evacuees natin ng Batangas hanggang Naik, Cavite, hanggang Bacoor na. So doon na sila na house doon sa malalayong lugar na hindi naman nagamit na evacuation center nila kasi natabunan na ng abo. So kailangan ba hong mag-MOA prior to the use, or will it be based on a good Samaritan, compassionate proposition? O mas maganda may MOA siguro para pagkatapos kayo
siguro
maglinis.
habang wala pa naman nangyayaring kalamidad. Siguro halimbawa ako sa San Juan, malaki yung aking evacuation center. Siguro imbitahin ko na yung mga ibang mga mahihirap na LGUs na makipag-MOA. O kunwari ako yung isang mahirap na LGU, may nakakita ko ng isang malaking evacuation center sa isang mayaman na syudad, makikipag-MOA na ako just in case para maging safe yung aking mga constituents, Mr. President.
So who will set the guidelines? DILG na siguro to, no, Mr. President? Oh,
Yes, Mr. President. And if I may, Mr. President, alam nyo, we anticipate that some LGUs may not have readily available lots for the construction of its own evacuation centers. Hence, we placed a provision allowing LGUs for the shared use of evacuation centers. Pwede naman pong ipagamit sa iba kung nais ng LGU. The idea is that these evacuation centers are established for and are meant to serve families displaced by disasters, Mr. President. At kung ayaw nila, we understand that since sila pong may accountability sa paggamit and serviceability ng evacuation centers, since sa LGUs ito turn over mga itatoy evacuation centers, LGUs may also enter into contracts that would be beneficial for the evacuation centers, including but not limited to the enhancement of amenities, upgrading of building capacity, among others, Mr. President. Yun yung binasa ko po kanina.
I totally agree, Mr. President. But perhaps under Section 11, the DILG should be likewise involved in the crafting of the rules so that the shared use. What about can be executed? What about the shared use of evacuation centers and utilization of the same with the private sector involved? Yung pribadong sektor po, hindi lang other LGUs. Po, pwede po ba yun, Mr. Sponsor? I'm referring to the private sector.
I was confused. May I know your question again, Mr. President?
Yung pong, are you willing to entertain an amendment that would include the private sector?
Yes, Mr. President,
in the
definitely.
utilization, lalong-lalo na yung may mga karanasan talaga sa kumupkop ng mga biktima ng kalamidad na merong mga counselors involved, etc., etc.
Yes, Mr. President. Especially if it comes from the good majority leader, I will accept all amendments, Mr. President.
What about international NGOs?
International NGOs?
Yes. My experience, Mr. President, during the Yolanda was that we're now talking to doctors coming from Spain, from France, now utilizing evacuation centers.
Well,
Pwede po ba yan?
Yes, Mr. President, we welcome all interventions to enhance the provisions of this particular measure, Mr. President.
I have no further questions, Mr. President. I thank both gentlemen. I laud the noble purpose of this measure para may masilungan po yung ating mga kababayan.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Di ba meron ka?
Majority Leader?
Yes, so, pero tignan mo yung section ano. Yes, Mr. President, let me continue, Mr. President. Tignan mo yung page 3. Actually, Mr. President, wala naman talagang mag-object dito sa bill na ito kasi maganda nga naman yung napakaganda ng idea. Ang tanong lang talaga,
Funding.
kung ma-afford ba natin. Pero actually, ang tanong, dahil sa revelation ng ating sponsor na, ginagawa na pala ng DPWH eh. Tapos mayroon ang old design, may new design. Therefore, they've been doing this siguro for 1 decade or may 1 decade na ba ito? As projects of the DPWH? Isang dekada na ba itong paggagawa natin ng evacuation center?
The program, the DPWH program started in 2016, Mr. President. The proposed bill will institutionalize the ongoing program of the DPWH, which started in
2016.
2016.
When we look at the DPWH budget, anong pangalan ng programa, anong pangalan ng programang mahahanap natin itong activity na ito?
to
Kasi ang
2024?
ang DPWH kasi from memory meron silang bridge program.
Yes,
Ano pa ba iba? Siyempre yung local or farm to market roads program. May ganyan po siya. May ating 5 ata yung main program sila. So under what program po ito mahahanap?
According to our resource persons, a basic infrastructure program.
Basic infrastructure program. Okay. So nagfa-fund na pala sila every year sa basic infrastructure program. So magkano po yung linalagay nila na budget every year?
For 2024, for this year po, there was a 1.44 billion appropriation, which is set to build 32 evacuation centers. Ibig sabihin, doon sa 32 evacuation centers, meron 2 evacuation centers per region. Paki-divide nga yung 1.44 sa 32 kung magkano lahat. How much? 54? So, ang average cost po ng isang, the average cost of one evacuation center is around, to give a ballpark figure, around 54 million.
Magkano?
54? Per evacuation center.
54 million? Basically open space?
Yes. On a 3,000 square meter lot, Mr. President.
Ito bang ating ground floor plan?
Yes. Ito yung binigay mo,
yung footprint niyan, halos 3,000 square meters yun?
Yes, 3,000.
So, nakabubong po yun?
Opo, nakabubong po yun.
Malaki-laki.
Yes.
Malaki ba?
Tsaka kompleto amenities. Like what? Pero,
So,
I was just talking about the 2024 budget, Mr. President. Yung mga earlier years, mas mura. Kasi mas mura pa yung bilihin nun. Okay. From 2016 to 2024, as we speak, meron na pong nilaan ang ating national government ng 17.2 billion pesos that has been allocated to build the evacuation centers, Mr. President.
So, looks like we don't need the law, Mr. President. Ano ulit ang contribution ng law na ito?
Para to institutionalize the program of the DPWH, Mr. President.
Okay, but with or without this law, kaya na nilang i-budget, di ba, sa basic infrastructure program nila. Meron ba sub, may line? Basic infrastructure program, then may sub line item for evacuation centers, building of evacuation centers. Ganun po ba? Check nyo nga. Katulong nga sa budget, ano?
Under the basic infrastructure program. Under the basic infrastructure program, meron po nakalagay rito, ito, ang liit.
Construction.
Construction of evacuation centers, Region 1, construction of evacuation centers, CAR,
Itemized talaga.
itemized po.
Opo, sige po. So, kayang gawin without a law, but the law institutionalizes it. But the law also limits it to, kasi meron yata rito prioritization. Sabi rito, may nabasa ko na pagka meron na, unahin nyo muna yung wala pa. Tama po ba yan?
Yes.
Pero, pagka in-institutionalize ito, ano yung sabihin nun? Yung meron na, pwede pa siyang balikan ulit ng isa pa. Ganon? Ganon ang gagawin natin?
Upgrade. Yung luma po, pwede pong i-upgrade, Mr. President. At isa pa, yung added value ng batas na ito is the prioritization and continuity of the evacuation center program, Mr. President. Ito lang yung added value of this particular measure, Mr. President.
Okay, but repairs and maintenance sa LGU
LGUs.
natin linagay?
Opo.
Oh, okay. So it's a building program, pero once na masatisfy, let's say, very very optimistic lang tayo na once masatisfy na lahat na meron ng at least one evacuation center per municipality and city, the program will continue, and the purpose is to build the next one? Ganun ba yun?
Yes, I surmise so. I think so, Mr. President.
Sige, okay. Okay, I don't know if that's a good policy. Well, yung one each, maganda siguro yung one each. Pero
But-
may mga school, well, the schools should also be open, Mr. President.
Kung wala na ho talagang may bibigay,
Yes,
I think that is the last resort, yung schools. Yung mga schools na...
Anyway, may
pwedeng-
prioritization naman ata rin, ano? Kung
Opo,
ano.
opo,
Sige
meron po.
So, I hope that we will be able to fund this. Pero sana ko sa using since program siya, standard ang design, materials would be standard also in number, etc. Sana pumasok ang concept ng economies of scale na kung to the extent na makafund tayo ng hundreds of millions in a year, sana makasave din tayo ng konting amount sa economies of scale para yung construction cost per evacuation center,
Lumiit.
mababa naman din po natin.
Yeah, I
Sa
agree with
ngayon,
you. I agree
it's,
with you.
54 million. Wala ba tayong picture nung bago? Wala tayong picture ng bagong para makita natin kung...
Yeah, to.
Hindi,
No, hindi.
hindi yung picture. So, ano po, parang basketball court, para
Parang
open
basketball
space yun eh.
court. Wala pa.
54 million pesos po kasi kaya gusto lang natin makita, Mr. President.
I don't think...
Wala pa ni isang na-build yung under the concept of a open space, yung basketball, kita sa basketball court. Wala pa ni isa.
I don't think they have a copy of the new.
So, yung nasabi po natin na 400 ano ba yung na-build? 412?
459? 436 evacuation centers that has already been
Already
constructed.
built. Meron tayong already built po na figure eh. Sorry po,
Meron ba kayo, ano?
nawawala sa picture. Oh, we have already 412 already built. So these were built under the old design. Ganun po ba yon? Because we cannot show a new design eh.
Design ba yung na-built na 400 plus?
Since 2020 po, new design.
New design?
2020 may new design na daw.
Oh, where's the new design?
This is, ito po yung may basketball facility. Ito po basketball.
Since 2020, Mr. President, according to our resource persons from the DPWH, new design na po. I can show you the picture.
Sayang.
Medyo
Sayang
madilim.
kasi yung...
We cannot, pwede ba i-flash to?
Sige, paano na lang? Because it's not really for my own consumption. Sana it's for the public's consumption. Makita sana nila, Mr. President. Pero,
Sa screen.
so at any rate, okay, ganito po, Mr. President.
Don't you want to see it, Mr. President?
Okay.
Hindi. Madilim. Malaki naman.
So, Mr. President, okay, minimum standards, standard design, 3,000 square meters land area. If an LGU can only find or offer less than 3,000, we will not build it.
Will not build it.
Pero ano kayo ito?
Maybe, Mr. President, we will look for another space. We know that not all LGUs will have available land where an evacuation center can be constructed, much more a 3,000 square meter lot. Mr. President, so in Section 6 of this bill, the DPWH shall upgrade and convert existing structures that meet the minimum requirement into permanent, fully equipped, and disaster-resilient structures. So I don't think if an LGU will offer less than 3,000 square meters, I don't think that will suffice. Mr.
We will not build it. The
No, Mr.
DPWH will not
President.
build it. Okay.
Look for another alternative, Mr. President.
Sayang po yung picture kung napakita natin. Para pala siya warehouse din, ano?
Yes, so, mukhang malaki mo.
Mukhang malaki siya. Mukhang structures yung at two structures tapos in between open space na with roof, di ba?
Yes,
Opo,
yes,
ganun
Mr.
po
President.
mangyayari na parang so sayang sana kita ng ating mga kababayan. Okay, we have a DPWH resource person, no? Ang basic infrastructure program daw natin sa 2025 NEP 61.8 billion pesos. Malaki pala yan. So component lang yung si evacuation center, no? Ano? Yeah, NEP to NEP. Just
Yeah, as a
explain.
NEP.
No,
All
just explain bakit malaki yung 61.8 B basic infrastructure program. Ano ba yung kahalo ni evacuation centers doon sa basic infrastructure program? What do we build under the basic infrastructure program?
Yes,
Evacuation centers, quarantine facilities, and public health facilities.
ang kahalo po ng BIP, Basic Infrastructure Program, bukod sa evacuation centers, meron pong mga quarantine facilities, public health facilities, Mr. President.
Meron din pong major strategic public buildings / facilities structural and resilience program. Kasali ba yan? Sa BIP?
Kasama?
Kasali din ba si public water supply system?
Kasama sila.
Tama po ba? Just for us to
Kasama?
Kasi malaki po ito just for evacuation centers and quarantine facilities.
Kayo dapat sumagot na.
61 billion.
Kasama ba?
Ano ba sa mo ito nakuha?
Ha?
Kasama sa BIP ito. Sige. Okay.
Kasama ba? The officials of the DPWH cannot give me a concrete
Sige,
answer,
di ba,
Mr. President.
sa budget na lang po. Okay, so final question, kasi nag-umpisa tayo sa estimate natin na meron 1,700 cities and municipalities. Okay.
Approximately,
Okay.
Mr. President.
I-minus na nga natin yung existing na, then mayroon tayong,
Yeah.
ito yung may iiwan, ito yung immediate beneficiary ng panukalang batas natin.
Correct.
Ita-times 54 million ba natin yon kung sakali makabigay sila? Then what is the total amount na for this project?
Compute. Well, according to the data from the DPWH, Mr. President, 1,642 LGUs minus 459 total number of evacuation centers at various stages of completion. Approximately, ang matitira lang po ay 1,183 ang municipalities and cities that do not have permanent evacuation centers that are funded and built by DPWH. Given the most recent estimate of DPWH for constructing one evacuation center at 53 million pesos each, construction of 1,100 evacuation centers in the future would amount to an estimated of 62.7 billion pesos.
Sige po.
Kung ang evacuation center mo ay 53 million, Mr. President. However, Mr. President, this figure can be lowered if some LGUs will be for upgrading of existing structures rather than new constructions, which is provided for in this particular bill, Mr. President.
Okay, yung upgrading of existing structures, we are saying existing structures built by the national government or pwedeng
local,
yung LGU
pwedeng-
din?
yes, yes,
So
pwede.
marami na bang LGU that have built their own evacuation centers? Sa information po natin?
Yes, Mr. President, I will just
Marami
get
na?
the data, Mr. President.
Marami na rin. So,
Yes, marami na rin po.
So okay, so ang offer ng program na ito is not for those LGUs na meron ng they made their own evacuation centers. Ang offer ng programa natin
To upgrade.
is to upgrade na lang.
Yes, Mr. President, you are correct.
Okay.
At doon sa mga wala, magbibuild.
O nga, but
Papatayuan.
yung i-build, merong specs, 3,000 square meters.
Yes, meron
yung
specs.
upgrade, kung ano na lang yun, we accept what is there, di ba? Tama
Yes,
po yun?
Mr. President. Ano to?
So, Mr. President, I think we will wish this program all the luck in the world. Agree naman tayo dito. Pero siyempre, let's just have, medyo ano lang tayo, parang request to the DPWH to use all of your imagination, professionalism, and integrity in bringing the cost of the program down to its barest minimum na efficient and
Sturdy.
resilient and sturdy pa rin yung structures,
Yes.
Mr. President. Ganun.
Yes, Mr.
Wag po
President,
nating-
the officials of the DPWH are listening, Mr. President.
Sige, we don't want scandals to surround this program, Mr. President, kasi evacuation center na to, kahirapan na ng tao to, suffering na ng tao yung ina-address natin, so we don't want scandals to taint this program. So we wish the DPWH all the best, and we thank the sponsor for sponsoring this measure. At any rate, we have made the observation na kahit pinaprocess pa natin yung law, meron naman palang evacuation center building project or sub-program under the basic infrastructure
Yes.
program. That's a reality, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Minority Leader, it was an honor for me to be interpolated by the bar top
Thank
notch.
you. Thank you to our distinguished Minority Leader. Thank you to our Senate President Pro Tem. The Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpret, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2451.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
A minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Move that we resume consideration of House Bill numbers 10440, 10441, and 10442. These are the bills for the establishment of schools. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, aforementioned bills are now under consideration.
Mr. President, having sponsored the measure and there being no other member who wishes to interpret, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection?
Isa-isa.
Yung magkakapareho.
Yung magkakapareho lang.
There being none, same is approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of committee amendments of House Bill number 10440 and recognize Senator Gatchalian to propose his amendments.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized for his amendments.
Mr. President, this is for the committee amendments, Mr. President. On line 2, replace the name Poblacion East with San Francisco.
Any
And-
object?
So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the proposed amendment is hereby approved.
And Mr. President, to amend the title to read as follows. An act establishing a national high school in Barangay San Francisco, Municipality of Santa Ignacia, Province of Tarlac, to be known as Santa Ignacia National High School and appropriating funds therefore. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? There being none, same is approved. Majority Leader?
With no other committee amendments, I move to close the period of committee amendments. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, period of committee amendments are hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill 10440. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill number 10440 is hereby approved on second reading. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, there being no committee or individual amendment, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10441. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill number 10441 is approved on second reading. Majority Leader?
There being no committee or individual amendment, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10442. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the aforementioned motion is approved. House Bill number 10442 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the three aforementioned bills.
Any objection? The aforementioned bills, further consideration rather of the aforementioned bills is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill numbers 10396 and 10443. These are the bills on the separation of school, extension, or annex. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, resumption of consideration of the aforementioned bills is now in order.
Having sponsored the measure and there being no other member who wishes to interpolate, I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? There being none, period of interpolation and debate is hereby closed.
Mr. President, there being no committee or individual amendment, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10396. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill number 10396 is hereby approved in second reading. Majority Leader?
There being no committee or individual amendment, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10443. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the motion? There being none, House Bill number 10443 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Leader?
I move to suspend consideration of the two aforementioned bills.
Any objection? Further consideration of the aforementioned bills is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 10397 under Committee Report number 326. This is the bill on the conversion of Calateo Elementary School into an integrated school. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, resumption of consideration of House Bill number 10397 is now in order.
Mr. President, having sponsored the measure and there being no other member who wishes to interpolate, I move to close a period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation and debate is hereby closed.
Mr. President, there being no committee or individual amendment, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10397. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill number 10397 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 10397.
Any objection? Hearing none, further consideration of the aforementioned House Bill is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 606. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine National Women's Obstacle Course Racing Team for winning the gold medal and setting a new world record at the 32nd Southeast Asian Games in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, May 2023. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is hereby approved and the aforementioned proposed Senate Resolution number 606 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 732. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Asia's first Grandmaster and Chess Hall of Famer, Eugene Torre, for ruling the 2023 Guam International Open Chess Tournament held at the Dusit Beach Resort in Tumo, Guam.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Resolution number 732 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 733. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Legit Status, HQ Philippines, and UP Street Dance Club for winning in the 2023 World Hip Hop Dance Championship 2023 held at the Arizona Grand Resort and Spa in Phoenix, Arizona on August 6, 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is hereby approved. Senate Resolution number 733 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 663, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 760. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Alex Ayala for securing her third International Tennis Federation or ITF professional title at the W25 YECLA tournament held at YECLA Club de Tennis in Spain on June 4, 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Senate Resolution number 663, taking into consideration Senate Resolution number 760, is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 957. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the 10 awardees of the 2023 Philippine Resilience Awards for Women.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Resolution number 957 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 447. This is the resolution commending Filipino surfer Rogelio J.R. Esquivel Jr. for being the champion in the World Surfing League La Union International Pro Longboard Qualifying Series held in San Juan, La Union 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, proposed Senate Resolution number 447 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 450. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Mapua University for winning the Philippines' first gold award for digital readiness from the 2023 The Wharton School QS Quacquarelli Simmons Reimagine Education Awards.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Senate Resolution number 450 is hereby adopted, subject to style.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 530. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine squash team after bagging 2 gold medals in the 23rd International Jumbo Doubles for the President's Cup held at the Tanglin Club in Singapore on February 16 to 19, 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Senate Resolution number 530 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 532. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Christian Bernardo and Alvin Morada for capturing a gold medal in the 2023 Iran FAJR International Badminton Challenge held on February 5, 2023 in Tehran, Iran.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is hereby approved. Senate Resolution number 532 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 551. This is the resolution commending and recognizing Filipino Olympian boxer Charlie Coronel Suarez for his recent win in Sydney, Australia, March 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Resolution is hereby adopted. Proposed Senate Resolution number 551 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 581. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine weightlifting team for capturing 7 gold, 4 silver, and 1 bronze medals at the 2023 International Weightlifting Federation or IWF World Youth Championships held in Doors, Albania on March 25 to April 21, 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. The resolution is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 583. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine National Karate Team for capturing 6 gold, 5 silver, and 23 bronze medals at the 10th Southeast Asian Karate Federation Championships held in Manila, Philippines on March 13 to 19, 2023.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. The resolution is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider and adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 596. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine National Baseball Team for securing their 4th consecutive championship at the 8th Baseball Federation of Asia East Asian Cup held in Pathum Thani, Thailand on May 4, 2023.
I think 13th baseball.
13. I beg to be corrected. It's not corrected, Mr. President.
Is
The
there an
13th
objection?
baseball.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved. The resolution is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 599. This is the resolution congratulating and recognizing Filipino bowler Merwin Tan for being the champion in the 2023 Professional Bowlers Association or PBA Bowlers Academy Open held last March 24, 2020 in Clovis, California, United States of America.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved. The resolution is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we consider adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1197, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 1201. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Daniel Quizon for securing the title of Grandmaster at 20 years old at 45th International Chess Federation or FIDE Chess Olympiad held at Box Sports Hall in Budapest, Hungary on September 15, 2024.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Minority Leader.
Mr. President, the Minority Leader is seeking the floor.
I think I filed a similar resolution, Mr. President, so I hope it's also taken into consideration. Was it mentioned? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay na. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2805 under Committee Report number 311. This is the bill on the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board Act. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, assumption of consideration of the said bill under the aforementioned committee report is now in order.
Having sponsored the measure, I move to open the period of interpellation. Recognize the sponsor, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, and to interpellate our Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco-Pimentel.
Hearing no objection, period of interpellation is now in order. Senators Padilla and Pimentel are hereby recognized.
Ano gawin sa President? Well, Mr. President, if we may be allowed now to commence our interpellation, and should we end it, it should be with reservation that we can ask questions during the period for interpellation. Okay.
Opo.
For amendments, your period of amendments.
Opo.
Okay. Sige po, because of the lateness of the hour. So, siguro ang kailangan lang natin malaman, ano po ba yung objective nitong ating panukalang batas, Mr. President?
Opo. Ginoong Pangulo, sa tagal po ng panahon at sa bilis ng panahon, magmula po nung pagkakatatag ng MTRCB nung Oktubre 1985, alam niyo po, marami na pong nangyari sa ating bansa. Marami na pong karanasan, napakadami na pong nagbago sa mundo. Nagkaroon na po ng internet, ang mga pelikula, nung araw napapanood po natin sa malaking tilon, napunta sa TV. Ang dami na pong nagbago. Makikita mo na yung pelikula. Pagka nanood ka po sa telepono mo, pwede ka na makapanood ng pelikula. So parang ang nangyayari po, Ginoong Pangulo, yung mandato ng MTRCB, yung kanila pong function, yung kanila pong gamit, yung kanila pong misyon, kung bakit po sila itinatag, ay hindi na po nakakasabay sa panahon. Nagkukulang na po ang 1985 to 2024. Nakita na po natin yung tagal. Ang dami na po. Dapat siguro, natural lang po, Ginoong Pangulo, na sa tulong po ng Senado, ng Kongreso, ay magkaroon po ng evolving. Kailangan mag-evolve ang kapangyarihan po ng MTRCB. Yun po yung nais natin, Ginoong Pangulo, na makasabay po ito sa panahon.
So, kaya nga, so ipapasabay natin ang MTRCB as an organization sa pagbabago ng kung paano tayo manood ng mga pelikula or mga video footages. So,
Opo.
So ano pong ginawa natin na pinalawak natin ang kapangyarihan ng MTRCB this time to include
Online stream movies po and
Streaming.
programs. Opo. Kasi po, alam niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, yung mga video streaming ngayon, iba't ibang klase na po ito. Meron tayong local, meron din pong mga international. Na sa ngayon po, kapag meron kang smart TV o smartphone, pagka nilagay mo yung mga app na yan, na galing po sa ibang bansa, na hindi naman po ito nakarehistro po sa atin. Wala po tayong kapangyarihan para itong mga streaming sites na ito, matawag natin ng pansin kapag sila po ay lumalabag na sa morality at batas po natin. Halimbawa po, may mga hindi na po aya-aya sa mga bata. Kung number one concern po natin dito kasi yung mga bata. Yung mga napapanood po ng mga bata na wala po tayong kapangyarihan na tawagin ang pansin nitong mga streaming sites na ito kapag sila po ay lumalabag na. Alam niyo po, wala po tayong control . Hindi po kagaya sa ibang bansa, katulad po ng Korea, katulad po ng Singapore. Opo, ito pong mga bansang ito, ay meron na po silang mga patakaran na sila ay mag-register. Ang hinihingi po natin sana, Ginoong Pangulo, na kapag ito po ay naging batas, ito pong mga streaming sites na ito ay makapagpa-register po sa MTRCB para po, hindi po sila para censorin. Kung hindi ma-register lang po sila sa atin, para kapag meron po silang, sa palagay natin, nalalabag po ang ating mga batas, pwede po natin silang ipatawag. Sa ngayon po kasi...
Tawag pansin, tawagin kasi nasa paano kung nasa Amerika yung
Yun po.
officers po noon.
Opo, yun po ang nagiging problema, Ginoong Pangulo. Kapag meron po tayong concern, hindi po natin sila nakakausap ng diretso. Hindi po kagaya ng ibang bansa na meron pong ganito na ipinatupad na nila, katulad po ng Korea. Meron pong karapatan po sila na ipatawag itong mga to at bigyan po sila ng kaukalang suspensyon kung ayaw po nilang sumunod. Kasi ngayon po talaga, pati po ang EU, Ginoong Pangulo, lahat po sila, meron na po silang ganito. Tayo na lamang po ang hindi natin pinagre-register itong mga movie streaming po.
What is the plan, Mr. President? Magiging proactive si MTRCB na kunyari yung library ni Netflix 50,000 movies, papanoorin ba nila lahat yun? O reactive lang sila kung may reklamo, saka sila kunyari, may nakapanood ng para sa kanyang nanonood sila as a family, then may anak sila, then nakita mayroon palang nudity doon, saka lang sila magrereklamo at saka kikilos si MTRCB.
Opo, kung naalala niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, nung ako po ay nag-sponsorship speech, sinabi ko na po na napaka-imposible po na mapanood po lahat ng MTRCB. Ako na lamang po, sa akin pong eksperyensya, ako lang medyo masakit na yung mata ko pag masyado ka ng... lover pa po ako ng movie, ano? Ang gusto lamang po natin dito, Ginoong Pangulo, na magkaroon po ng coordination. Magkaroon po ng coordination ng MTRCB dito sa mga online streaming po na ito. Na sila pong dalawa, nag-uusap po kung ano yung mga programa na naaayon po sa ating mga kabataan. Opo, hindi po para i-regulate o gano'n. Wala po. Magkaroon lang po ng coordination. Opo.
Nasa ngayon ay wala.
Wala po talaga.
Sige.
Wala po tayong kapangyarihan ng kahit anong Ginoong Pangulo.
Sige po. Pero napansin namin na parang yung law governing the MTRCB parang rinipaso na rin po natin.
Opo, kasi...
At the same time, rinipaso na natin.
Opo, kasi wala na po talaga sa panahon. Opo. Talaga pong nalipasan na po.
Yung decision-making process po ng MTRCB, para ba silang jury body, tapos nagbumoboto sila kung approve, rated parental guidance ba? PG, at saka
Opo, nagka-classify po
rated
sila.
X yata sila, yung not for public viewing.
Opo, kung naalala ko po...
How is it reached? Ano bang body ba yun? Tapos majority wins? Ganun ba?
Opo, may board po sila.
Ilan po yun?
Opo, una po, mapanonoorin po ng 3 tao.
Opo.
Sila po ang magka-classify. Tapos kapag nanood po yung 3 tao at meron pong apila, panonoorin po ng 5 tao na. Opo. Hindi po ito parang masyado po silang mahigpit. Hindi po. Kasi ang mga nandito din po sa MTRCB ay mga nasa industriya din po. Ano? Sila din po yung mga katulad ko. Katulad ko po, nung araw din po, Ginoong Pangulo, marami din po tayong pelikulang na-ex. Ano po talaga? Dahil sa violence po. Ano? Sa violence. Hindi po sa usapin ng love story, ano, sa violence po, ano. Kaya naiintindihan ko po talaga ang function ng MTRCB at napakahalaga po talaga. At ito pong usapin sa online streaming, Ginoong Pangulo, medyo naaabuso po talaga ito. Naaabuso po ito.
Susunod din sa ganong the usual process. Three-person body, nagre-review unang rating, tapos...
Sa online po, hindi po. Sa online, hindi po. Opo,
okay.
kasi sa online po, kasi parang coordination lang sila.
More of the administrative to, na the MTRCB will have personality to
Opo,
Siguro
meron lang po
to
silang...
communicate with the online streaming services, relay to them our standards or our classification system, parang
Opo.
gano'n. Tapos,
Opo.
then expectation natin, susundin nila.
Opo.
Kung sakaling meron na lang magreklamo na, uy, masyado namang, masyado namang
Mahalay.
bulgar itong isa or masyado nga violent itong movie na ito, yung Filipino citizen ay lalapit sa MTRCB to communicate to the online streaming services to classify
Isa
it
po yun.
correctly.
Opo.
Pero magiging accessible pa rin eh. So, ang point is hindi rin malalaman ng MTRCB sinong nanonood eh. Anong age eh.
Opo, ang una pong hakbang, Ginoong Pangulo, ma-register muna po itong mga online streaming po na ito. Kasi sa ngayon po talaga, Ginoong Pangulo, wala po tayo. Minsan po, nagkaroon po ng reklamo dyan, ang mayroon pong karanasan ng MTRCB, na pinatawag po nila. Hindi po talaga, ang sabi po sa kanila, hindi, magreklamo na lang kayo sa community. Ang tagal po nun. Pagka yung pong proseso na yun ang sinunod natin, marami na pong nakapanood ng mga bata doon sa gusto nating una sa lahat. Tandaan po natin, mga bata po ang pinoproteksyonan natin, Ginoong Pangulo. Ayaw po natin silang magkaroon ng access sa mga ganitong palabas nang hindi lang po tayo kumilos. Opo, nagbigay po tayo ng isang nararapat na gawin. Opo.
Sige po, we'll just reserve our other questions as we propose amendments to the sections. Ganun na lang ang mangyayari. May we know who is the chair of the MTRCB, Mr. President?
Ma'am Lala Soto po, nandito po sa kaliwa ko, ma'am.
Does she happen to be the daughter of our idol, the former Senate President, Mr. President?
Opo.
That's why I need to terminate now my interpellation, Mr. President, with that information.
If I may, Mr. President, only one question to the sponsor.
Sige po.
With the permission of the minority leader. Only one question, Mr. President. Kasali po ba sa tinutukoy na on-demand online streaming platforms ang mga social media platforms gaya ng Facebook, TikTok at YouTube kung saan maaaring mag-stream at live stream ng content?
Sa
Kasama ba
ngayon
sila?
po, Ginoong Pangulo, hindi po.
Hindi.
Hindi pa po.
No, sa ilalim ng batas nyo, kasama na?
Hindi po.
Hindi pa rin?
Opo. Online
So, paano
stream.
natin mariregulate yung... So, Netflix kasama?
Netflix po, kasama po. Netflix, yung Prime, yung mga...
I understand itong mga apps na ito, hindi nagbabayad ng buwis sa atin, no?
Wala po.
Viva Max. Kasama sa pag-regulate.
Ang alam ko po, meron pong naka-register po. Alam ko may proper coordination po kayo sa Viva Max. Nag-uusap kayo. Saklaw siya. Saklaw po sila nitong batas na to.
So pag meron kayong
Palukala.
meron kayong nakitang hindi masyadong maganda, pwede nyo i-ban.
Hindi
Kasi
po,
kahit bata
hindi
pwede
po, hindi
mag-access
po,
yan eh.
Ginoong Pangulo, hindi po sila kaagad nagbaban o naggagawa ng mga ganong
O
bagay.
warningan nyo.
Opo, meron po silang sinusunod na due process. Katunayan po, lagi pong nasa kamay ng producer kung ano po ang magiging kahinatnan ng kanyang pelikula. Ang MTRCB po nandyan lang para mag-classify at tulungan po tayo kung ano yung mga nararapat na maipalabas po sa
So
ating mga
itong
kababayan.
mga Netflix, mga Viva Max, are they going to undergo classification under the new bill?
Ano po, sorry po, hindi ko po na...
Are they going to undergo classification under this
hindi
new
po,
bill?
hindi po. Wala pong coordination lang po, Ginoong Pangulo. Wala po tayong gagawin ganon. Ang kailangan po, meron naman pong self-classification po ang mga online streaming movies. Nandun na po, pag nakita nyo, may classification na po sila. Ang gusto lamang po natin, mag-register po sila sa atin at sumailalim po sila din sa batas po natin.
Okay. Salamat. Majority
Maraming
Leader,
salamat po.
Si Senator Rizzo
Mr.
Tiveros,
President, the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Tiveros, is seeking the floor for her interpellation.
Mr. President.
yes, please proceed.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Good sponsor. Actually, hindi ko balak sanang mag-interpellate. Meron lamang po akong maikling siguro manifestation, pero ipagpapasalamat ko rin po kung meron kayong komento dito. Naisip ko lamang i-raise na rin nung may binanggit ang good sponsor na hindi balak ng MTRCB sa pamamagitan nitong bill na mag-censor. At may nabanggit din po ang minority leader na may nabibigyan din ng X rating. Meron pong nangyari kamakailan lamang na sobra po talaga akong nabahala. At kung hindi lamang po ibinawi ito ng MTRCB paglipas ng ilang mga linggo, pinaghahandaan na po ng committee ko maghain ng isang resolusyon para alamin ano bang nangyayari doon. At ang tinutukoy ko po, Mr. President, ay yung pagbibigay ng X ng MTRCB sa pelikula tungkol kay Jonas Burgos, katapon ng kanyang kapatid na direktor. Si Jonas Burgos po na maraming taon na, isang dekada na yatang hinahanap nung kanyang ina, si Edita Burgos. At sa totoo lang po, Mr. President, na-shock ako nung bigyan nito ng X rating at nung una, ipinagbabawal na ipalabas ito sa atin. Dahil ang reaction ko pa nga noon, Mr. President, good sponsor, ay dinisappear na nga yung tao, pati ba naman yung pelikula tungkol sa kwentong buhay niya, i-disappear din. Mabuti na lamang po at ilang linggong nakalipas, binawi po ng MTRCB yung X rating. May ibang rating na ibinigay na lamang na hindi na ipagbabawal yung pagpapakita nito. At magiging posible mapanood itong napakahalagang kwento po tungkol sa karapatang pantao, tungkol sa accountability, tungkol sa pagmamahal ng ina at pamilya sa isang anak, sa isang miyembro nila. Kaya gaya ng nabanggit ko po sa simula, Mr. President, good sponsor, hindi ko sana babanggitin o i-interpellate ito dahil baka hindi po eksaktong kaugnay ng bill. Pero dahil nabanggit na nga po yung 2 puntong iyon, naisip ko rin na baka mahalagang sabihin din sa pagdinig ng good sponsor at ng MTRCB na rin po. At baka naman meron din kayong komento tungkol dito dahil sobra po talagang nabahala ako sa pangyayaring iyon, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Sponsor. Salamat po.
Your Honor, Senator Rizzo, if I may intervene, I am handling the budget of the MTRCB, and fortunately, I asked that question.
Salamat po,
Why
Mr.
the
President.
movie, if my memory serves me right, the chairperson is here. I asked that movie, and together with the movie of Dear Santa, Dear Santa, Dear Satan or whatever, kasi in-ex din nila yun. So I asked, what was the reason behind the X rating of both of these movies? And I think itong kay Jonas Burgos ba, ay pinalabas yata sa Cinemalaya only, no? At binigyan nyo na ng rating ng R16, R18? Exemption permit.
Exemption permit.
Yes, so that was their answer to me when I questioned why did they give an X rating to these two movies, Your Honor.
Maraming
Ginoong
salamat,
Pangulo,
Mr. President.
ang naging rason daw po kung bakit ito ay hindi kaagad na ipalabas. Dahil tini-check daw po nila muna kung meron daw po itong mga pending cases. Kasi ito daw po ay napakalaking issue. So baka ito po ay may mga kaso, baka yung pagpapalabas po daw ng pelikula, baka makapagbigay ng subjudice po ba? Parang ganun. Pero nung na-check po nila na wala naman daw po, at ito po ay malinis, ito po ay binigyan na po nila ng pahintulot na ipalabas kagad.
Kaya po nabawasan ng kahit papano yung sobrang pagkabahala ko sa unang X-rating, Mr. President, good sponsor. Dahil ang tagal na nga nung panahong iyon at hanggang ngayon, hindi pa talaga nabigyan ng hustisya si Edita Burgos at yung buong pamilyang Burgos sa pag-kidnap, pag-torture at pagdi-disappear. Malamang sa hindi, pagpatay na kay Jonas Burgos. At parang nung una kong nabasa yung pag-X-rating, parang isa na namang dagok kay Edita Burgos na hanggang ngayon hindi pa mahanap yung pagkatao ng anak niya, buhay o hindi na buhay. At parang isa na namang dagok sa kanya na yung kwento ng anak niya ay nagkaroon ng banta na hindi na maipalalabas. Meron pa nga akong isang nabasang dahilan, di umano, ng board noon na may ilang grounds kasi silang sinight sa pagbibigay kung sakali ng X-rating at isa po doon ay kung parang makakabawas sa konfiansa nating mga Pilipino sa ating gobyerno. Pero kung gano'n ang naging isang ground nila sa simula, baliktad po sa katwiran eh. Ang nakakabawas sa kumpiyansa nating mga mamamayan sa gobyerno ay kung ang karanasan natin o perception ay ang gobyerno ay hindi nagpoprotekta sa ating karapatang pantao o di kaya siya mismo ay gumagawa o hinahayaan niya ang mga personnel niya na lumabag sa ating karapatang pantao. Natingin ko po yun ang nangyari kay Jonas Burgos. Kaya napakahalaga sanang cautionary tale ang ganyang pelikula at mga pelikula pa. Napakakunti na nga para napasailalim pa ng ilang linggo sa X-rating. Kaya actually, ayun, kaya malaking bagay na rin po na binawi ng board yung ganyang X-rating at sana po ito ay naging reflection point din sa kanila kung paano mas magkaroon ng supportive rather than restrictive na reaksyon sa mga pelikula tungkol sa karapatang pantao, Mr. President, good sponsor. Marami pong salamat.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator
Ginoong,
Risa.
Pangulo.
Majority Leader.
Ginoong Pangulo,
Sorry, Senator
opo.
Padilla.
Nararamdaman po natin kung ano po yung ipinahwatig ng ating mahal na kasama, Senadora Risa Ontiveros. Sapagkat katulad po ng una kong panimulang salita, pati po ako, ay nagkaroon na rin ng napakaraming experience na ang mga pelikula ko po'y na-ex. Talagang masakit po yun. Totoo po yun. At siyempre, sa una, iisipin mo, bakit parang pinangahawakan ang isang katulad ng sinabi ni Senadora Risa Ontiveros, isa itong tunay na pangyayari. Alam niyo po, napaka-sarap isipin na ang demokrasya ng ating inang bayang Pilipinas ay buhay. Sapagkat meron tayong mga kalayaan na gusto nating pangalagaan. Pero sa panahon po na dapat ay may mga bagay na kailangan natin tayuan, lalo na kung hindi ito gawa dito sa atin. Opo. Halimbawa, ito pong isinusulong namin na online streaming. Ito pong mga produkto na ito, hindi po sa atin ito. Itong mga produktong ito ay masasabi natin na yung iba may kinalaman sa kultura natin pag galing sa mga Asyano. Pero pag galing sa ibang lahi na masasabi nating Western masyado, minsan kailangan po natin talagang pag-isipang mabuti na ito bang mga palabas na ito, kaya na ba nito? Kaya na ba ito na matanggap ng ating mga kabataan? Katulad po nung mabanggit ko lamang po, nung isang araw ay nagsalita na din yung ating mahal na Pangulong Bongbong Marcos patungkol sa mga pang-aabuso din sa mga bata na may kinalaman din po sa online. Hindi ko po sinasabi na gusto nating panghawakan na rin ng mga nasa ibang social network, katulad ng TikTok, yung mga ganyan. Hindi po. Ito pong batas natin ay nandito pa lang sa online streaming. Pero sinasabi ko po yung weight, yung bigat na nakasalalay po sa ating mga katulad ng MTRCB na ito pong naglipana ngayon ang mga kabastusan, kahalayan, violence na walang katuturan, siguro po kailangan natin dito. Pero ang paalala po natin palagi sa ating lahat at lalo din po sa MTRCB na ating pong nasa kaliwa, tayo po ay malayang lipunan. At yung pagiging malaya natin, may mga batas na kailangan natin sundin. At yung mga batas na yan, ay inaasahan po natin hindi magiging pang-abuso sa karapatan din ng ibang tao. Dahil dito, sa pinag-uusapan natin, dapat pantay-pantay po ang ating karapatan. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Maraming salamat, Senador Robin Hood Padilla, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate, I move to close the period of interpolation.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2805.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, September 18, 2024.
Is there an objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock the afternoon of Wednesday, September 18, 2024.
The 23rd session of the Senate in the 3rd regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Amy Marcos will lead the chamber in prayer. You are recognized, ma'am, and you may